Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is a story about what if Naruto x Rukia in Bleach. Before I start, please support for more amazing content and do consider subscribing to my channel and share this video with your friends. This is written by SCARFACE 101 and link in the description and support writer. Let's start the video. Chapter 1. Pilot. It was nighttime in Konoha, a cool and crisp breeze flowing through the streets as a lone figure stood atop the rooftops, gazing out across the village. What few civilians there were on the streets below did not acknowledge the figure's presence. It was a woman, dressed in black robes with dark hair and a katana at her side. Her eyes narrowed as she whispered to herself, "I don't get it. This lack of activity isn't normal." She muttered to herself as she pulled out a small device from her robes, frowning deeply at the lack of results. The woman sighed in frustration and shook her head before muttering to herself, "Well, I guess in the meantime, I should continue my investigation." But that said, she vanished in a blur to carry out her mission however unusual it was. The next morning. Naruto yawned sleepily as he rested his head against a loosely closed fist while pretending to listen to yet another history lecture from his class's teacher, Rukia, who was yet again talking about the founding of the village. While the whiskered teen didn't doubt the importance and value of learning the history of one's village, he couldn't help but question why their curriculum couldn't be supplemented with more practical lessons. Why couldn't they learn things like first aid, for example? Or survival skills? Or other jutsu techniques? It would be lessons of that nature that could save their lives on a mission, not history. Now that he thought about it, he recalled overhearing a kunoichi who was openly complaining about how soft a number of classes had become at the academy. Who was it that set the curriculum anyway? Was it the Hokage or was it left to the discretion of the teachers of their respective classes? Should he ask the Sandame about it? While he wasn't aware of the laws pertaining to this, he was sure that not properly training or teaching academy students would be a pretty major issue that would need to be addressed. While the whiskered teen may be a bit biased, a fact he was ready to openly admit, he was certain that Rukia was not a good teacher. On several occasions he asked the scarred Chunin why he kept failing at the clone jutsu, only to be rudely brushed off and told that he just needed to train harder, while he didn't have physical proof of the fact. He was strongly certain that the teacher was aware of the reason why he constantly failed performing the aforementioned jutsu, but deliberately chose not to say anything. How could Rukia not know during the entire time he had been under the Chunin's thumb? His musing came to an end as he heard the bell start ringing loudly, almost obnoxiously so, almost as if it were tormenting him, as it signaled that the lecturing period was now over and that class spars were about to begin. Almost automatically, the students began to file out of the classroom in single file, the process being so meticulously performed that it was now practically a muscle memory for most of, if not all of the students. The whiskered teen had his hands in his pockets, his mood souring further as he knew what was to come. To call this event class spars was pretty much a sad joke in his opinion. These days, it was like some sort of a ritual that allowed the golden boy of the academy, Sasuke Uchiha, to show off his talent and also remind everyone who the top dog was, and the sacrificial lamb that was always paired with the Uchiha was the Uzumaki himself. The rest of the spars mostly consisted of civilian kids beating the snot out of each other in basic and uncoordinated brawler styles, and Sasuke fangirls who scratched and pulled hair, and in more extreme cases there was biting involved. Suffice it to say, the whiskered teen felt miserable and that the academy offered nothing but mindless repetition and stagnation. As the students gathered around a sparring circle, the whiskered teen spotted an unfamiliar face standing off to the side. It was a young-looking woman, short and petite in stature with black hair and piercing purple eyes, dressed all in black with a katana at her hip. He didn't recognize her from the village, and the blonde usually had a good memory for names and faces, largely so he would remember who to befriend and who to avoid. Was this girl a visitor? A tourist? Was she a samurai or Ronin? He couldn't tell, and a large part of him wanted to go over and ask her, but he wasn't sure if that would be rude or not. Their eyes met for a brief moment and the mystery girl's eyes widened as she tilted her head in confusion as the blonde waved at her in a friendly manner. Strangely, the girl looked around as if checking to see if there was anyone else around before meeting his gaze again. Her gaze then went downwards as if she were having some sort of internal debate before nodding to herself and approaching the whiskered teen with a serious expression on her face. Once she closed the distance between them, she pointed a finger at the whiskered teen and spoke in an almost demanding tone. You with the whiskers. Can you see me? The Uzumaki raised an eyebrow at that. Of all the questions she could have asked, he certainly wasn't expecting that one. Yes. Is there a reason why I shouldn't be able to see you? He responded, wondering if this girl might be practicing some sort of camouflage technique to hide her presence or something. Was she training to be a kunoichi? The girl said nothing and turned on her heel, briefly glancing at him over her shoulder before disappearing out of sight in a blur of motion. That was weird. He whispered to himself and glanced around, noticing that the other students were completely engrossed and laughing at the sight of a pair of Uchiha fangirls wrestling and rolling on the ground while screaming and arguing with each other that their crush, Sasuke, liked them and not the other. He quickly guessed that nobody else acknowledged the presence of that strange girl, or even paid attention for that matter. He wondered who she was and if they may meet again at some point or other. Also, that strange girl didn't look at him with a contemptuous or condescending look like many of the other villagers and even his own classmates. It was refreshing to say the least, in spite of the fact that their interaction was both brief and bizarre. His thoughts were interrupted as he heard the familiar and grating voice of his teacher call out Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha. "Please enter the ring." The whiskered teen frowned and reluctantly entered the ring along with his opponent, knowing that he was once again being set up to be the Uchiha's punching bag yet again. Kami, it would be satisfying to beat the crap out of the Uchiha and grind that smug attitude of his into the dirt. Unfortunately, he was at a severe disadvantage because of the fact that Sasuke was indeed talented and proficient in his clan's taijutsu style, and because the Uzumaki himself did not have any legitimate training of his own. Most of his fighting abilities were self-taught, and while they were enough to defeat nameless thugs and schoolyard bullies, they didn't hold a candle to Sasuke's sheer talent. If only he had a means by which to level the playing field, a way to unbalance or catch the self-proclaimed Avenger off guard, or get him to make a mistake, or even better, a proper teacher that would train him in taijutsu techniques. Sasuke stood there at his usual position, his eyes closed and his hands in his pockets. He was clearly confident in his talents, confident to the point of arrogance. In the background, Sasuke's fangirls were cheering up a storm for their crush, squealing and singing his praises while encouraging him to beat the dope into a bloody pulp, while the raven-haired boy ignored the girl's obvious affections. For him, if one looked close enough, it was easy to tell that, in a way. He was enjoying the praise and attention. "Must be nice, everyone kissing up to you." Naruto muttered disdainfully, feeling a strong sense of bitterness well up in him. He didn't know why it was bothering him so much today, especially since this was an everyday occurrence. For some unknown reason, he was finding it difficult to hold his tongue right now as he let slip some of his own thoughts and feelings. "HN. Jealous, are we? Upset that nobody is cheering for you, dope? Then again, why should anyone cheer for a clanless and orphan loser like you? Why are you even here? All you do is fail, time and again. Why do you even bother to keep trying? Even if by some miracle that you do pass, then at best, your only real purpose will be as cannon fodder, not like it matters, since no one will mourn you." Sasuke spoke, his words dripping with a cold apathy and a hint of sadistic satisfaction at tormenting the whiskered blonde. It was at that moment something within the Jinchuriki snapped as he muttered angrily, "Fuck you, Sasuke." The blonde inhaled deeply then began tirade, "Go fuck yourself. Nobody cares about you either. You're nothing to anyone. You're not a real person to anyone in this village. You're a trophy. You're an accessory. You're breeding stock. The only reason people suck up to you and kiss your ass is because of your money and status. Everyone here knows it. Everyone. You're just an asshole that carries a bloodline that people are waiting to see get revitalized. Every greedy asshole in the village wants to set you up with their daughter so that you can knock them up and then they can get a hold of your money. Nobody really likes you for you. All you are to anyone is a walking piggy and sperm bank to be exploited." Dead silence filled the area as everyone stood with their mouths agape at this. Before anyone could respond, Naruto pointed towards the form of Ino Yamanaka and called out, "Ino. What do you like about Sasuke? Not his money, not his talent, not his looks, what do you like in him as a person?" The whiskered teen demanded his question and singled out the heiress, catching her off guard. She stammered for a few seconds, trying to come up with a response as she fumbled with her words. Everyone stared at her expectantly as they waited for her answer, the staring making the young mind walker even more nervous. Finally she blurted out, "I don't know. I can't think of anything." "Can anyone name a reason why they like Sasuke?" Naruto questioned as he randomly pointed at his various classmates. Once again, a deafening silence filled the area as almost everyone shuffled around uncomfortably as they were unable to give a solid reason as to why they liked the Uchiha. "I rest my case. No one genuinely likes you, Sasuke. It's all for superficial reasons that everyone praises and worships you. That reminds me, people keep going on and on about how you survived the Uchiha massacre. Others say that Itachi let you live. Which is it?" The blonde questioned with a mocking grin only for his face to fall as he realized his mistake. Just as Sasuke had pushed him, he had made the same error and pushed the Uchiha by bringing up his elder brother in the Uchiha massacre. He had allowed his temper to get the better of him and his mouth to run away from him. The Uchiha glared at him with eyes full of rage and hate. With an angered war cry, the raven-haired boy charged at the blonde teen and proceeded to beat the snot out of the Uzumaki. The blonde boy raised his arms in a futile attempt to protect himself from Sasuke's enraged assault as a barrage of blows collided against his form. Naruto tried to hold his ground, trying to find some sort of opening to slip away from or counter Sasuke's attacks. The Uchiha's fist slipped through the Uzumaki's crumbling guard and collided with his nose, making the blonde stumble back as he felt blood began to leak from his nostrils. "If you ever say that name again, I'll kill you." Sasuke muttered with a sneer, his words making the whiskered teen wonder if the self-proclaimed Avenger's threat was legitimate or not, if he would follow through on that promise or not. One thing was for certain, if he did indeed carry out that promise, he wouldn't face any real consequences. His ears perked up as he heard the forms of both Hinata and Ino shouting at the teachers, telling them to call off the match, since things had gone too far. He glanced at the two Chunin who were idly standing by with their arms crossed, with a tiny smirk of satisfaction being seen on Rukia's face, his eyes shining with glee at seeing the Jinchuriki being hurt and bleeding. "It is always the same. Every day. Always. It's just so infuriating. People look down on me, think nothing but the worst of me, and for what? I did nothing wrong. I wish that I had a way to change things, to make things go my way. If only I had power, then I could show all these bigoted assholes what happens when they mess with me." Naruto thought as he felt resentment and hate boil inside of him. He saw Sasuke charge at him again, ready to resume his barrage, and then time seemed to slow down, speed up, and pause all at once. Naruto's eyes widened as within his mind flashed many scenes and images. Some depicted the Uchiha defeating him and brutalizing him, others showed the blonde standing victorious instead and how to gain the victory that he so craved. "Just once, even if only once, I want to win. I want to win. I want to be number one." Naruto screamed in his mind as he acted on one of the images within his mind. He dove under an oncoming blow from the Uchiha and threw his body weight into Sasuke's torso, knocking him off balance. The raven-haired boy quickly rolled back and trying to sweep kick the Uzumaki, only for the blonde to leap over it and slam his foot into the Uchiha's face with enough force to send him flying outside of the sparring ring. Everyone stared in shock, almost everyone present couldn't comprehend what was happening. For the first time, Sasuke Uchiha had just been defeated, his undefeated record now shattered by none other than the dead last. None were more shocked by this fact than the two Chunin Mizuki and Rukia, and of course the Uchiha himself, who was currently sprawled out on the ground with wide eyes as he registered that he had been knocked out of bounds. Sasuke's shock wore off and was quickly replaced by anger as he charged at the Uzumaki once again. "Hey! Call the match." Naruto shouted angrily at the Chunins in action. Once again a myriad of images flashed in his mind, and he found one that prompted him to sidestep the elite Uchiha and stick out his foot to trip the raven-haired boy, once again making Sasuke fall out of bounds. The duck-haired boy leapt to his feet once again and was preparing to rush the Uzumaki once again, but this time he was held back by the forms of Kiba and Chaoji, who were restraining the Uchiha, even as he wildly thrashed around in their grip. "The fuck are you asshats waiting for? Call it already." The Inyazuka shouted, snapping the Chunin from their stupors. The two teachers exchanged looks, neither one of them wanting to declare the winner of the match, especially Rukia, who looked like he had just chugged back a gallon of curdled milk and bitten into a very sour lemon. Finally, with much reluctance, the scarred Chunin shouted, "The winner is Naruto Uzumaki." "Foul. I call foul. You cheated somehow. I know you did. There's no way you can beat me at Taijutsu." Sasuke shouted in an accusatory manner, many students looking at him with frowns as they saw the Uchiha acting like a sore loser. No doubt the loss had severely bruised his ego. In the manner of speaking, he wasn't wrong. Unfortunately, Naruto had no way to explain how or why he was able to perceive and anticipate the Uchiha's movements during the match. He didn't even know why or how he attained this new ability. However, he had no intention of spilling the beans right now. Not when the looks on both Sasuke's and the teachers' faces were so damn satisfying. "Oh yeah? Prove it. How did I cheat?" Naruto asked in a challenging voice, his words making the raven-haired boy's face turn a deep shade of red as it darkened to the point his head looked almost ready to explode from the mounting blood pressure. The blonde felt an oncoming headache as he pinched the bridge of his nose as the visions of things yet to come faded from his mind. A part of him wondered where that power came from and why it activated when it did. However, his curiosity faded in favor of savoring this victory against the Uchiha. The so-called elite himself glowered while trying to come up with something, anything that could support his claim. After a few seconds more, the Uchiha heir gnashed his teeth and rudely shoved his way through the crowd while shouting over his shoulder, "I'll make you pay for this." The Uzumaki scoffed dismissively while muttering quietly, "Yeah." Typical Sasuke glanced at the two Chunin teachers who seemed to be whispering something amongst themselves, all the while Rukia in particular was giving nasty and disapproving looks that were directed towards the blonde himself. Not that he really cared. The initial shock began to fade from the other students, some were wondering how the so-called dead last managed to pull a win out of his ass, others, mostly the Sasuke fangirls, dismissed Naruto's victory as a strange fluke or trick of some sort. All the rest seemed quite eager to spread the word along the grapevine and get the rumor mill started, especially Ino Yamanaka, who was the self-proclaimed but undisputed queen of gossip within Konoha. Naruto didn't know what exactly would come next, but he had a strong feeling that his win and Sasuke's humiliation could cause potential problems somewhere down the line. Then again, his life was nothing but troubles upon troubles, adding a few more to the pile wouldn't make that huge of a difference. Class bars were cut short a bit early due to the earlier spectacle, much to the many students' dismay, since it obviously meant more history lectures. A short while later, the students were all reassembled in their classroom and were in their respective seats. Once everyone was in their places, Rukia began his lecture starting over from the very beginning and repeating his earlier droning, almost as if he were reading from a script without any real passion or care. No one was really paying attention to him as the many genin hopefuls were busy whispering amongst themselves about Naruto's win, with many wondering if there could potentially be a repeat performance or if the dead last had simply lucked out. Not an unreasonable line of thought, since the blonde wondered how he might be able to do it again. He did indeed get a little lucky by that currently unknown ability. What was it? Where did it come from? Had he somehow tapped into a bloodline ability? He had never heard of one that enabled the user to perceive the future. Who could he even talk to about it? If he fessed up about it, then it would prove that he did cheat, albeit unintentionally in the beginning. He shrugged to himself and decided not to say anything, at least not at this time while tempers were still running hot, as was the case with a certain Uchiha who was not so quietly seething in his seat while casting rather obvious sideways glares at the blonde. Aside from the elites whining and grinding his teeth throughout Rukia's lecture, the day passed on without further incident. The Jinchuriki had to admit he was kind of hoping to be congratulated for finally breaking Sasuke's undefeated streak. Aside from the circulating gossip, the reactions were rather muted. Surely there had to be others who felt a sense of satisfaction as seeing the Uchiha be beaten for one. Were they just that afraid of speaking out against him or something? Nevertheless, classes were soon dismissed for the day and the various students were sent home. The whiskered teen expected to be given a talk by Rukia for what happened earlier, but nothing came of it. Most likely he would tattle to Sandaime first like a whiny schoolgirl if the Uzumaki knew the man well enough. Regardless, Naruto walked home in relative silence, ignoring the ever-present glares of the many villagers. He predicted that by tomorrow, at least half of the village if not more, would become aware of Sasuke's first ever loss. A small twinge of smugness came over the blonde as he pictured the various Uchiha worshippers' reactions when they learned that their precious and loyal Uchiha had lost to the demon brat. At long last, he returned to his apartment and entered inside while habitually calling out, "I'm home." Despite there being no one there to greet him. He yawned tiredly and decided to prepare some cup ramen to put some food on his stomach and then later take a shower before bed. As he rummaged around in his kitchen he noticed that something felt a bit off in his apartment. He wasn't sure how to accurately describe it, but there was a sense of dread in the air. The atmosphere felt more foreboding and oppressive in nature. He slowly turned around with his eyes scanning his apartment. Nothing looked disturbed or out of place, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was something wrong. He couldn't put his finger on it, but he couldn't shake off this nagging feeling as warning bells went off in his head. He continued on, trying to shrug off the uneasy feeling, but found himself unable to relax as he felt his hair stand on end. Time and again he checked his apartment, pretending that nothing was wrong as he searched for the source of whatever was causing this disturbance, but still found nothing. Kami, this was probably going to drive him nuts until he found out why he was feeling this way. His ears perked up as he heard soft footsteps behind him and saw a familiar figure standing in the center of his apartment, looking around with their back turned to him. It was the same girl he had met earlier, the strange one with the katana. Strange is it around here? There's some strong spiritual power here. The stranger whispered to herself, evidently not noticing the Jinchuriki's presence. How in the hell did she even get in here? All the windows were locked and he didn't hear them or the window open. Did she phase through the walls or the floor somehow? He wondered if she was the source of his sudden anxiety and then cleared his throat and tapped on her shoulder. "Excuse me, mind telling me what you're doing in my apartment?" he asked in a neutral tone, trying not to sound hostile since it seemed like this girl was looking for something or someone. She tensed up and slowly turned around to face him, her eyes widening in shock as she recognized him immediately. "You again? You're that kid that saw me. And you just touched me just now." She muttered in shock and then placed a hand on her shoulder where he touched her. "Sorry, you one of those types that don't like being touched? If so, my apologies. Now, who are you and what are you doing in my apartment?" he asked her, though he found her reaction to be slightly odd, perhaps it was a quirk of hers. "How? I don't get it. How are you able to see and touch me?" she demanded while stamping her foot and then began to look over the Jinchuriki's form with a wary and calculating expression, almost as if she were observing some sort of zoo animal or laboratory specimen. Her behavior proved stranger and stranger. Am I missing something here?" You mind adding some context? I'm completely lost. Naruto questioned, unsure how else to respond to her as he was confused by the strange girl. He then cleared his throat and added, how about we start over with a proper introduction? My name is Naruto Uzumaki. The raven-haired girl continued to stare at him, her eyes narrowing for a few moments before she finally responded Rukia. Rukia Kachiki. Clearly you must possess a strong spiritual presence to so clearly discern with and interact with me. You may find this difficult to believe, but I am a Shinigami. She spoke, revealing her true nature to him, her words causing his eyes to widen a bit. This Rukia was a Shinigami. An actual death god. Living in the flesh. Right here in his apartment. He sensed no humor, sarcasm or deception in her words, and her eyes shined with a deadly edge that showed just how serious she was being. If she was indeed a Shinigami, then it would account for why nobody else saw or acknowledged her presence at the academy grounds and why she behaved so oddly. No doubt it was most unusual for her to interact with those that still lived. Not that I don't believe you, but you look drastically different than how Shinigami are depicted here in Konoha. He responded while tilting his head, remembering numerous sketches and portrayals of Konoha's iteration of the Shinigami that was summoned by the Forbidden Reaper death seal technique that the Yondaime famously used to defeat the Kyuubi so many years ago. Before today, how many Shinigami have you actually laid eyes on? Rukia asked with a quip, making the Uzumaki sweat drop a bit since she had a point. She was right, he had never actually seen one until just now. Perhaps Konoha's depiction was the closest iteration that could be perceived by the shinobi that dared to summon it. Who knows? He didn't fully understand the mechanics of it all, especially since there was a good reason for why that particular jutsu was forbidden to begin with. Namely, the life of the caster being the fee to utilize it. But point still, if you're here in my apartment and you were at the academy earlier, are you here to reap me? The whiskered teen asked with a raised eyebrow, since he had seen her twice in the same day. Definitely not a good omen. Rukia shook her head and replied gently, no. I have not come for you. I am conducting an investigation of sorts. Her words made him sigh a bit in relief that his time wasn't yet up, not that he actually feared death itself per se, but that was another matter. An investigation. He parroted, prompting the female Shinigami to nod as she brought out a sketchbook and began to scribble something on it, no doubt planning to explain things and add further context for him to understand. Much to his gratitude, that is, until he saw what appeared to be bizarre doodles of what he assumed to be rabbit-like figures that he had difficulty making heads or tails of. Not that he planned to critique her art style, since she was armed with a katana and could still potentially reap him if he ticked her off. Shinigami, like myself, are tasked with the duty of guiding human souls, known to us as pluses to soul society. The afterlife, as it were. We are also tasked to hunt down creatures known as hollows, corrupted human souls that have become ravenous and bestial in nature that can and will devour the souls of others, living or dead, to satisfy their hunger. Your village, Konoha, has had virtually zero hollow activity for some years now. My mission is to investigate why there is no presence of hollows. She explained to him, trying to keep it simple for him as he nodded along, more or less getting the basic gist of it. None of those hollow things whatsoever. Is that really unusual? He asked while scratching the back of his head as he tried to keep up with her explanation. Very. Hollow activity varies from place to place, though usually they are most attracted to areas where there is high spiritual power to try and ease the hunger that plagues them and make themselves stronger in the process. Your shinobi nations is a pretty ripe target considering your ninjas sling around your jutsu techniques and whatnot. While we managed to get as many souls to pass on as possible, there are obviously some that slip through the cracks and become hollows, but I digress. The other shinobi villages have shown fairly standard numbers of hollow attacks that we have been able to quell, but your village alone has shown absolutely zero attacks for some years now. As I said before, it is my mission to find out why that is. Rukia explained as she pocketed her sketchbook with the blonde crossing his arms. Any theories on the matter? He questioned, becoming rather curious. If these hollows were as dangerous as Rukia led him to believe, if not more so, then it would probably be best to help her fulfill her mission for the good of all. Nothing solid. Hollows can be opportunistic in nature. Perhaps there is an abnormal type that is cannibalizing other hollows to protect its turf. Though, this is just my opinion. I can't seem to find any traces of the damn things for some reason. She responded with some clear frustration in her tone. The cannibal hollow? Somehow that sounded even worse to the whiskered teen. Well, if there's anything I can do to help, lem know. If you want, I can be a guide or something to help you get around. Not to boast, but I could navigate this village blindfolded if I had to. He offered with a sincere smile. Her eyes widened slightly by the offer. She was reluctant to accept his help considering the dangers involved, but having a guide could help her investigation proceed more smoothly. She considered her options and then noticed the whiskered teen seemed to be fidgeting uncomfortably for some reason. Are you okay there? she asked him with some concern. I dunno, ever since I came back to my apartment I've been getting this weird sinking feeling that there's something wrong. Some weird vibes, I guess. Not to be rude, but is it coming from you? He asked her since she was the only thing that was out of place within his apartment. Weird vibes. What do you? She proceeded to ask him, but then she felt it too, he was right. There was something strange at work here. Was there a hollow nearby? If so, it must be trying to conceal its presence. She reached for her blade and then suddenly the floor beneath them exploded in a shower of splinters and shrapnel, sending the two of them flying in opposite directions. The Jinchuriki had the fortune to land on his nearby bed, which softened his landing, prompting him to spring to his feet, and then saw a strange creature standing above the enormous hole in his floor. It was a strange creature with a dragon-like mask on its face, its body humanoid with a slender frame with powerful-looking arms and legs, and a set of wings on its back, which further added to the dragon-like visage. No way. And it judges. Rukia muttered softly, her eyes widening in alarm as she recognized this type of hollow. This was not a standard type, it wasn't anything like the usual small fry that she often dispatched. There was a hollow that had reached an evolutionary stage that enabled it power on par with her superiors. There was no question or room for doubt, this hollow must have been hunting down and devouring others of its kind to grow stronger. She had to take action, and quickly. Naruto. Run away. Run. She yelled out and immediately charged forward with her blade drawn to intercept the beast, lest it try to attack the blonde. The dragon hollow let out a snarl as glowing eyes appeared from its mask that radiated malice. It grabbed Rukia by the throat and threw her out the apartment, sending her crashing through a wall and out onto village streets. In the background, the blonde kicked open his apartment's door and leapt down the stairs as quickly as possible before sprinting to Rukia's side. She was groaning and wincing from the pain as she forced herself to her feet and adopted a defensive stance. Naruto. You have to run away. This isn't a standard hollow. I don't know how long I can hold it off for. She warned him and gestured for him to retreat. The blonde had to admit he was afraid. His first instinct was to run away for the sake of self-preservation, but at the same time he was shocked by the fact that a total stranger was trying to protect him like this. Me? What about you? He questioned, realizing that if she lost to this creature then it would likely eat her just as it had its own brethren. Don't worry about me. I'm a Shinigami. Our duty, our role, is to be guardians. Now go. Hurry. She called out to him and made the mistake of averting her eyes from the Ajuchas, out of worry for the whiskered teen. It was too late for her to realize her blunder, as the dragon-like hollow knocked her blade away and then rammed its fist through her stomach, effectively impaling her on its forearm. Naruto stared in horror as he saw blood dripping from the clenched fist as the hollow tossed Rukia's body aside, her limp form landing beside her katana with a wet splat. The Jinchuriki ran to her side as he removed the upper jacket of his signature jumpsuit and placed it on the large hole to try and stop the bleeding as much as he could, even if it was a futile gesture. Damn it. Rukia. I'm sorry. This is my fault. I should have run when you told me to, then you could have fought without worrying about me. He whimpered out, tears filling his eyes as he realized that his indecision may have just cost her life. Naruto, not too late, run, live, she urged him on, even as blood filled her mouth. A chill went down his spine as the Jinchuriki realized that Rukia was going to sacrifice herself for him. She was essentially telling him to leave her behind and allow the hollow to make a meal of her so that he might survive. No, Rukia, I can't, I don't want to do that. I can't just let that happen to you. Damn it. Why am I so useless? Why am I so powerless? He screamed out in frustration. He first had a small taste of power against Sasuke, only for it to vanish as mysteriously as it appeared, and just when he needed the most it did not come. For so many years he had been powerless. He was powerless against the widespread hatred of the villagers. He was powerless against the indolence of his teachers. He was powerless against Sasuke up until he gained that strange ability, and now he was powerless yet again as he saw Rukia barely clinging to life. Why? If only I was stronger, if only I had power, he muttered angrily, feeling furious at himself for wasting so much of his life playing pranks for attention instead of training harder. There was but one infallible truth in the shinobi world, only those who had power possessed the right to dictate the course of the world. Without power, without strength, there was nothing he could do. Rukia silently regarded him, a gentle smile on her face as his tears fell against her cheeks, and then a moment of clarity and understanding passed over her as she reached an epiphany. Naruto, my sword, she pleaded, her voice just barely above a whisper as she used whatever strength she had to reach for her katana. He heard and understood her words, snatching her sword from the ground and placing it in her hand, the footsteps of the dragon hollow slowly approaching them, almost as if it were toying with its food. There's a chance, my sword, plunge it into your chest. Whatever power I have, take it, she offered him, making him nod as he understood that she was likely going to transfer whatever Shinigami abilities she had to him. While he didn't like the idea of impaling himself on her sword, since that would usually lead to death, he did trust her. "Naruto Uzumaki, please live, survive," Rukia whispered, feeling certain that these may yet be her last moments. He simply nodded as they both held her sword together, the tip pressing against the blonde's chest, as he now stood over her, bracing himself for the coming pain, forced the blade into his chest, and felt power course through him. A blast of wind came, followed by blue-white energy that formed around the whiskered teen, the force of this gale sending his jacket flying away. Blood dripped down on the blade and spilled onto Rukia's form, with small droplets spilling onto the remains of her midsection. The glow encased the Uzumaki as he now found himself wearing the same black robes as the dark-haired woman, a long adachi in his hands with the blade being approximately 160 centimeters in length. The handguard was covered in what appeared to be burnt orange fur, with the butt cap and blade collar being golden. The hollow took a small step back at the sudden burst of power as the blonde pointed his new blade towards his foe and spoke aloud, "Listen up, hollow. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. On this sword, on Rukia's sacrifice, I hereby make this pledge. I will never again know defeat. I will never be powerless again. I will protect those who are also powerless as I was. I will train, I will grow strong. I will become so strong that even gods and devils alike will quake in terror from my name. Remember. I am Naruto Uzumaki and I will never again know defeat, despair, weakness." The blonde adopted a readied stance as he channeled as much energy as he could into his blade, the ground quaking beneath him as blue-black energy cracked around his new sword. "To hell with you." Naruto roared as he swung the blade down, the sheer force of the swing splitting the ground in its path, forcing the dragon to dash off to the side, an arm and a leg being sliced clean off as the hollow was injured by the Uzumaki's attack. "Damn, I'm not used to this power yet, time for another," the whiskered teen declared as he prepared to channel his energy into his sword yet again, only for the hollow to let out a deafening roar before a black hole, a portal of some sort, appeared behind it as it retreated to safety. Feeling satisfied that the threat had passed, he sheathed his blade, the sheer length of it, forcing him to carry it over his shoulder, rather than at his side. He then returned to Rukia's side, her robes now pure white, save for the bloodstains due to her injuries. Her eyes were now glazed over, lifeless, devoid of any spark. She was gone now. He gently cradled her head in his lap and stroked her cheeks, brushing aside her hair. "Rukia-san, I'm so sorry, you didn't deserve this. You were a good person. A truly good person. Even in spite of the fact I was a stranger, you still protected me. You showed me infinitely more kindness than most of the villagers here. I don't know what happens to a Shinigami or where they go when they die, but I hope you're in a good place. I hope to put this power you gave me to good use." He whispered to her and hugged her tightly, sniffling quietly as he had caused the death of such a kind-hearted person. He sobbed and sniffled quietly, considering on where to lay her to rest and giving her a proper burial as she deserved, but then he heard a strange squelching sound. He looked down and saw her flesh slowly knitting itself back together, what was once a gaping hole and pulpy mass became a smooth, slender and toned stomach. He then looked at her face and saw color returning to it, then all at once she began to gasp for air and wheeze, her eyes lighting up with life as she looked around frantically. Why am I alive? I'm alive. How? Was the only intelligent words that came to her mind as the two exchanged looks, neither of them unable to fully comprehend what in the hell had just happened, but that didn't stop Naruto from embracing her while screaming at the top of his lungs, "Rukia-san. I'm so happy you're alive. It's a miracle." She chuckled awkwardly, returning the embrace while gently patting him on his back, unsure of how to react to whatever just occurred. As the whiskered teen joyfully sobbed, the hug grew even tighter as the raven-haired girl heard the sounds of her bones cracking audibly. "Naruto, help. Crushing. Can't breathe." She wheezed out just in time as the blonde realized his was squeezing her too hard and quickly released her from his grasp to allow her to breathe. "Sorry about that. I'm just glad you made it. Was that some kind of Shinigami ability? I didn't know you guys could regenerate." The whiskered teen spoke with a broad grin, his smile threatening to split his cheeks apart. Right, Shinigami ability. We are pretty tough, tougher than most humans." She answered in an unsure tone as she patted at her stomach while inspecting it, all signs of injury, save for the bloodstains on her robes, now gone. "The hollow, did you defeat it? How?" she asked, noting that the dragon-like beast was now gone and the Uzumaki showed no injury whatsoever. "I chopped off 2 of its limbs, then it ran away into some kind of portal." He answered in blunt honesty, his response prompting a nod from the ravenette as he helped her to her feet. She wobbled for a moment before regaining her balance. "I see. I'm glad that you weren't hurt and that you were able to drive it away. It most assuredly retreated to Hueco Mundo, the hollow world, to lick its wounds and recuperate. It may or may not return someday to seek revenge." She responded, which made the Uzumaki give a small ah of understanding. "Right. Well, if it comes back then I'll just beat it again, especially after I train and get a better handle on the powers you gave me. He responded with a confident and somewhat cocky grin, though that was not undeserved. The female Shinigami then registered the fact that Naruto, who had only attained Shinigami abilities but a few moments ago, had grievously injured an Ajuchas, a hollow capable of challenging a captain. If he was that powerful as a greenhorn, just how strong would he become with proper training? So what happens now? Your investigation is over now, right? Hollow has been found, beaten back to whatever stinkhole it came from, that means you can go back to your soul society or whatever, is that correct? Naruto asked as he scratched his cheek with a lone finger. Rukia deflated a bit before responding, that is correct, except I can't go back. With my powers gone, I can't summon a portal to return home. I have to rest and let my powers return before I can leave. She then gestured to herself, more specifically her now white robes, which seemed to further illustrate her point. Damn. I guess that's also my fault for stranding you here. If you want, you can stay with me until your powers come back. He offered with a large grin. She was touched by the offer as she did not expect such generosity. He didn't even hesitate. Is that okay? Won't your parents object? What are you going to tell them? She questioned since she didn't wish to impose on the boy or cause problems for him. His smile fell a bit as he scratched the back of his head. I don't have any parents. I'm an orphan. That aside, if they were alive, I think that they would want me to help someone in need. Not to mention, I owe you for protecting me and for offering your powers to me. It's only right that I take responsibility. He spoke, offering her his full support. She pursed her lips and then spoke. There's something else now that the Ajuchas is gone, whatever hollows it has been preying on will likely return. Since I can't fight them as I am now, please, I don't have any right to ask more of you, but can you help me fight any hollows that appear? Okay. Was Naruto's swift reply with no hesitation or questions. His response making the Ravenet blink a few times at how quickly he agreed. Offering to open his home to her was one thing, but actually fighting hollows once again after this recent encounter. She was expecting him to put up some form of resistance or even show some reluctance. That's it? Just okay? No reservations? No second thoughts? She questioned him, probing at him a little bit as she wondered if he was being serious. Again, I owe you. You saved me and gave me your powers. Wouldn't be very good of me to spit on your sacrifices by refusing to help you. Am I afraid of fighting hollows again? Maybe a little, but then I'm training to be a shinobi, a warrior, so I have to learn to face and overcome my fears. Also, while I don't have much love for a lot of the villagers here, I can't turn a blind eye to the possibility of those hollow things killing and eating someone that is innocent. If you need me to lend you a hand and fight them, then that's what I'll do. All the while, you can help train me and help me understand whatever new abilities I gain from you. It's a win-win. What do you think? He asked at the end with a large grin. His words made her burst out laughing for a few moments before she answered, I think that you're an interesting person, Naruto Uzumaki. You're also good and kind too. You also seem to have your own code of honor as well. Alright then, starting today shall be the beginning of our newfound partnership. She then looked at the wrecked remains of his apartment and pointed out while speaking apologetically, I'm sorry about your home. It seems like it is currently uninhabitable. No big loss. Place was barely being held together as it was. He responded in a nonchalant manner, evidently unbothered by the state of his now former apartment. He was looking for a new home to move into anyway. He was planning to do so sometime after graduation and becoming a genin, but it seems like that wouldn't have to wait. He couldn't and wouldn't subject Rukia to sleeping outside or on the ground after what she did for him. I promise to compensate you. For now though, I have to go. I need to get some supplies. The raven-haired Shinigami announced and then departed in a rush while waving farewell to the whiskered teen. You gonna be okay on your own? He asked out of concern as he watched her retreating form. She then called back over her shoulder, I'll be okay for a while. Don't worry. I'll come find you later. She promised him at the end, which was more than enough for the whiskered teen as he gave a small smile. He then heard the sounds of footsteps rapidly approaching, making him turn and see the form of the Sandaime Hokage approaching with his Anbu guard, all of whom were very late to this party. Naruto. What in Kami's name happened? What happened to your apartment? The street? The aged Hokage asked in a rapid-fire manner. The blonde teen hesitated since he doubted it would be a good idea to speak the truth without Rukia's permission. Well, I was coming home to my apartment and then something exploded. He answered, trying to keep his story as simple as possible. Exploded? You mean like a gas leak? A pipeline bursting? The Hokage questioned as he inspected the damage. There were no signs of anything being burned, nor any signs of water damage or anything of that nature. It seemed more like something quite literally tore the place apart in his opinion. The Sandaime's eyes narrowed a bit as he gazed at the boy Naruto-kun. Are you lying to me? Also, where did you get that sword and robes? The blonde couldn't help but cringe as he had difficulty lying, especially to the sandaime. Before the whiskered teen could respond, he heard a shout of almost forgot. The Uzumaki turned and saw a certain figure approaching which the Jinchuriki recognized to be Rukia sprinting towards them with some kind of device in her hand. "Please excuse me." The Ravenette shouted as she shoved the device into the Hokage's face, and out came a puff of smoke which caused the sandaime to collapse on the ground. "Hey. What did?" the Anbu shouted angrily and drew their tantos to try and protect their now unconscious Hokage, until Rukia also sprayed them with the same smoke as the sandaime, which also rendered them all unconscious just as well. Memory replacement. I almost forgot that people would come around asking questions. The raven-haired Shinigami quickly answered the Uzumaki's unspoken question before dashing off again, leaving nothing but a cloud of dust in her wake. The Jinchuriki wasn't exactly sure what that memory replacement stuff entailed, but at least he was bailed out for now. If that stuff really worked, then most likely, the Hokage would probably find his story more believable, or maybe it would just work out on its own, and he should just nod and play along to whatever memories that had been planted in the sandaime's mind. At the very least, he was now in the clear. He chuckled a bit and decided to move the sandaime and his Anbu to a more shady spot to get them out of the sun, since it would be even more suspicious if he tried to carry them back to the Hokage tower. He then proceeded to haul the group out of the sun until they regained consciousness. The sandaime was the first to recover as his eyes snapped open. He then groaned and got to his feet as he muttered, "Erg my head, damn it, I told Guy not to let his student drink again." "Come again?" the Jinchuriki questioned as he wondered exactly what sort of memories took root in the aged Hokage's mind. The name Guy sounding pretty familiar for some reason. Lido Guy, a jonin. Very eccentric fellow, but loyal to a fault and the most prolific taijutsu user in Konoha. His student, a boy called Rock Lee, has an extremely low tolerance for booze and can go berserk in a drunken rage. Case in point, just look at what he did to your apartment and the street. I even had to chase after him personally along with my Anbu to stop the carnage. The Hokage stated angrily while gesturing towards the damage. Wow, seems like this Rock Lee was going to be in big trouble despite not actually doing anything. It made him feel sorry for the poor guy, but he had to make a small sacrifice and keep his mouth shut lest the old man begin asking questions again. Now that he thought about it, what would this Lee person have to say if the Hokage accused him of something that he didn't do? Wouldn't that be worse? Speak of the devil. There you are. The aged Hokage shouted while pointing a finger to someone behind the whiskered teen, making him turn around and see a shinobi team walking a group of dogs. The one in particular that the old man was pointing towards was a boy with extremely bushy eyebrows who seemed like a miniature clone of a man that the whiskered teen assumed to be Mido Guy, the clone likely being Lee. "Mido Guy. I told you to never let your student touch alcohol ever again. Apologize right now." The Hokage shouted, making the Jinchuriki grimace. That was it, it's over. He was cooked now. Oh no. Lee did this. I could have sworn the damage had been contained last night after we celebrated our team formation anniversary. How careless of me. This is most unyouthful. The taijutsu master cried out while clenching his fist. Meanwhile in the background Naruto could scarcely believe his luck. Was this for real? What were the freaking odds? Was he a manga character or did he have some kind of godly luck? The Uzumaki watched as the Hokage continued to angrily chew out both teacher and student, while a tomboyish girl with panda-like buns and a Hyuga boy that he didn't recognize could only watch in bewilderment and confusion, but raised no protests or comments, while simply shaking their heads. Seems like, in the end, things just worked out somehow. He found himself smiling once again as he couldn't help but think about Rukia and all that she did for him, and now armed with his new Shinigami abilities, he planned to make good on the oath he made and grow even stronger. Stronger than ever before so that he would never be powerless again, and so that he may protect those who can't defend themselves or those he cares for. "Rukia Kichiki, I hope that you can acknowledge me as your friend," he whispered to himself. His win against Sasuke was a sign that things were changing. It was time to move on to what would be a new and perhaps better chapter in his life, as he felt that things would soon get much better for him. End Chapter 1. Chapter 2. School Days. Naruto yawned as he woke up and found himself staring up at an unfamiliar ceiling. It took him a few moments to shake off his drowsiness and remember yesterday's events. Meeting Rukia, their close encounter with that hollow creature, Rukia's transferring her powers to him and of course his wrecked apartment. After Rukia had erased the Sandaime's memories, the aged Hokage forced Team Guy to profusely apologize, almost comically, to the point that they forgot what they were even apologizing about. Most fortunately, no one asked any further questions about the damage that had been done to his former home. In exchange for not pressing charges and to keep the blonde quiet about that whole mess, the old man promised to move him into a much nicer apartment. Naturally, the Uzumaki accepted and had been moved into a hotel until his new apartment had been acquired with the Sandaime footing the bill and a very generous increase in his stipend. Overall, a definite improvement over his previous conditions. He wondered what happened to Rukia after she had left him and where she was. While she promised to find him again, he still couldn't help but feel a little worried about her. Nevertheless, he would trust her to return when she was able to. He made his way over to the nearby closet to get a change of clothes. Most fortunately, a great many of his belongings survived the Hollow's attack. The items that didn't survive were quite easily replaceable or not even worth replacing at all. He put on a spare set of his usual orange jumpsuit while briefly glancing at the Shinigami robes he had attained after gaining Rukia's abilities. He decided to forego wearing them for the time being so that his classmates wouldn't question his sudden change of clothes. On another note, with his increased stipend, he would be able to afford better and more presentable clothes without having to rely on bargain bin sales, as was the case with his usual jumpsuit. Now dressed and ready, he cast a glance at his new sword that was currently resting in a nearby corner. A small part of him thought about leaving it behind, but something in him told him to take it, like they were meant to be together, meant to be inseparable. It didn't take him long to surmise that the blade must be a key part to his new abilities, ergo it was essential for him to take it, not to mention he had always wanted to practice the art of Kenjutsu but never had the money to buy a proper sword. Now that he had one, he could begin to learn. Perhaps Rukia could assist and coach him. Now that he thought about it, they would also need a place to train as well. Fortunately, there was no shortage of training grounds to choose from. Though the real issue was, would he have to worry about others spying on him or discovering the true nature of his newfound abilities? He shrugged to himself and picked up his sword and carried it over his shoulder with the assistance of a pair of crimson Seigyo cords that were wrapped tight around the jet black lacquer scabbard, which made it easier to carry around. He then sighed and made his way towards the academy, a small part of him hoping that today things would be different. He pocketed his room key and exited the hotel room before leaving and began walking down the village streets. As he marched, he heard the sounds of various villagers speaking in hushed whispers. They were being much quieter than usual today, though he didn't get the feeling they were talking about him for once. He couldn't hear exactly what they were saying, but he definitely heard the word Sasuke and Academy. If he had to make a guess, the rumor mill was beginning to make its rounds. Without question, his classmates told their parents about what happened, who then in turn spread it to their friends and neighbors, and on it went, with the rumor also being helped along by Ino, the queen of gossip herself. He guessed that those who didn't see the event firsthand were questioning the validity of the rumor, not very surprising, especially since he could understand why. Still, there was something else that he should consider. Regardless of if it was a fluke or not, Sasuke wasn't going to let his broken undefeated streak go unanswered. If the Uzumaki knew the golden boy, he was certain that the Uchiha, with his wounded pride, would come at him with a vengeance the next time they stepped into the sparring circle. On another note, it was kind of refreshing that he wasn't receiving the usual looks from the villagers, as they were too absorbed in their gossip to even acknowledge his presence. It wasn't much longer before he arrived at the Konoha Academy and his classroom. When he entered inside, a hushed silence came over the room as all of his fellow classmates stared at him. As expected, the Sasuke fangirls all glared at him scornfully, with the exception of Ino, who seemed to have a sly smile on her face, as she seemed to be enjoying the potential drama which would inevitably lead to even more juicy gossip. Most of the other students seemed to have more subdued expressions, though their eyes flicked nervously in the direction of the Uchiha himself, who was openly glaring at the Jinchuriki, his onyx eyes smoldering with hate. The blonde wondered why many of his classmates were afraid of the Uchiha, perhaps it was due to his political backing. It was common knowledge that there were people within Konoha's governing body that would bend over backwards and would do anything to please Sasuke, especially if it meant getting a cut of the Uchiha fortune that the unfortunate heir was sitting on. Perhaps they were afraid that even the slightest insult would get them in trouble with the Uchiha's backers. Not that it bothered the whiskered teen, there wasn't much anyone in the village could do to him, especially since he didn't have that much, if anything, to lose. Hey. Dope. The hell is with that sword? You trying to overcompensate for something? Shouted the familiar voice of one Kiba in Yuzuka, breaking the silence. The whiskered teen didn't even feel the sting of that intended barb, since he himself didn't choose the shape, form, or length of his new blade. Still, he didn't want the horned dog to get the last word in as he replied, no, nothing like that. It was a gift. His words and tone being neutral, well, he couldn't tell the actual truth. It wasn't technically a lie that the blade was indeed a gift of sorts. Yeah? Who'd be crazy enough to give you a nice-looking sword like that? Kiba questioned incredulously. Fortunately, the whiskered teen was saved from having to answer and further prodding as the forms of Iruka and Mizuki entered the classroom, the former of the pair giving a funny look to the blonde and the blade that he was carrying. He looked as if he wanted to ask about the sword as well, but bit back his question as he cleared his throat and asked for everyone to take their seats. Jinchuriki had to suppress a relieved sigh as he took his place in his usual seat, keeping his new sword at his side, while taking notice of the fact that he could see Sasuke leering at the Adachi from the corner of his eye. Either the Uchiha himself had an interest in Kenjutsu, or he just wanted the blade so that he might take something from the whiskered blonde, perhaps both. At the front of the classroom, Rukia cleared his throat once more, but instead of taking roll call, he began to make an announcement as he spoke in a loud and clear voice. Attention all students, today, we are receiving a transfer student. Please give a warm welcome and treat your classmate kindly. At this piece of news, many students began to whisper amongst themselves. A new transfer student. While not unusual in itself, it was kind of odd for them to transfer in the middle of the school year, which would put them way behind the rest of the class. The scarred Chunin then gestured for someone to come in, prompting the classroom door to open, and then someone entered, which proved to be a figure that the whiskered teen immediately recognized. It was Rukia herself, who was sporting a confident smirk on her face as she was now wearing a white sleeveless shirt with a blue trim, jean shorts with a brown belt, and shinobi sandals. "Hello. My name is Rukia Kichiki. I hope we can all get along." She greeted politely as the students once again began to whisper amongst themselves. Some of the whispers came from the boys who found the newcomer to be cute. Most of said whispers, however, came from the girls, most particularly the Uchiha fangirls who viewed the Ravenette's presence as potential competition for Sasuke's affection. The whiskered teen came to the conclusion that the raven-haired Shinigami must have used her memory modifier and some other methods to implant herself in the academy, most likely so that she may stay close to him. As she promised, she had come back now. The other question was, why was everyone else now capable of seeing her and acknowledging her presence? Was there some kind of trick involved? Somehow, she must have obtained a corporeal form to interact with the living. He was absolutely buzzing with questions, but knew better to make a scene in front of everyone else, though that didn't stop him from giving a small and friendly wave towards Rukia, her smirk widening just a bit as thanks for the gesture and for maintaining his silence. After this, Rukia dismissed the new student and instructed her to find an empty seat. She nodded and took one that was a few rows back, but directly behind the whiskered teen. Even at a distance he could feel her gaze upon his back and felt a form of understanding from her that she would answer his questions in due time when they were alone and had some privacy. A few minutes later, after a quick roll call, Rukia began his history lecture of the day, particularly focusing on the Kyuubi attack, which was possibly a jab at the whiskered teen himself as he frowned. No doubt his teacher was trying to get under his skin or send some kind of a message. The prick. He wasn't a fool, he had long since known about his Jinchuriki status. It wasn't difficult to connect the dots given that he was born on the same night as the Kyuubi's rampage and how the village populace treated him. The only way he could not see the truth was if he put blinders on and deliberately ignored it. One thing was for sure, he had no intention of giving the Chunin teacher or any of his other tormentors any form of satisfaction. He took a brief glance over his shoulder to look at Rukia, who was attentively listening to the lecture while jotting down notes, which made the whiskered teen wonder just how out of touch the Shinigami were from the mortal realm. He supposed that aside from hunting hollows and reaping souls, they didn't have much reason to interact with the world of mortals. He also suspected that they did not age as humans did, or perhaps the concept of time was different for a Shinigami. He hummed in thought and found himself subconsciously running his thumb along the hilt of his adachi, and for a brief moment, he could have sworn he sensed a feeling of contentment from his blade. He shrugged to himself, wondering if he was imagining things as he pretended to listen to the lecture while still running his thumb along the hilt. Every so often he would check on the raven-haired Shinigami, who was completely absorbed into the lecture. Poor girl. She hadn't yet realized the hell that she was currently in. He gave her a week, maybe less, before she began complaining of potential brain death after listening to Rukia's repeated lectures. The blonde then snuck a glance towards the Uchiha, knowing that he would be paired against him yet again in the coming class bar of the day. While the whiskered teen wasn't sure if he could reactivate that precognitive ability on command, he did remember that in many of the potential futures he witnessed that Sasuke had a habit of leaving his left side exposed. Hopefully that tidbit of knowledge could give him an edge. Additionally, perhaps it was for the best that he couldn't yet access that power. He did not wish to rely on it too much to the point that it became a crutch. After some time, the lecture finally came to a merciful end as the scarred Chunin concluded with the Yondame's sacrifice and the Kyuubi's defeat. He then cleared his throat and announced, today, we'll be doing things a little differently for class bars. A special student versus teacher matchup. When your name is called, you will face off against myself or Mizuki in a little spar. If you can last 3 minutes against us or successfully force us out of the ring, then you win. This earned a ripple of murmurings from the students with Naruto frowning a bit. Student versus teacher spars were pretty rare, though not unheard of, since it was a chance to see how they stacked up against their senseis. Though in the Uzumaki's opinion, it was a curious coincidence that the teachers chose to have this done the day after the Uchiha's loss. Either this had been already planned prior to Sasuke's defeat, or more likely, it was Iruka's way of trying to teach the whiskered blonde the status quo or perhaps for personal satisfaction. In the background, Sasuke had a look of obvious disappointment that his chance for a rematch with the dead last had been delayed, but he would still get some pleasure from seeing Naruto struggle against the teachers. It was all the same to him, sooner or later, he would defeat the blonde once again and prove that his loss from yesterday was nothing but dumb luck or perhaps cheating. As per usual, the students uniformly marched out of the classroom with Rukia following everyone's lead. Naruto had to hand it to her, she seemed to be blending in quite well, almost as if she were used to being part of what was a military academy. It made him wonder if the Shinigami had one to learn and train as well. The students gathered around the sparring ring, the Uzumaki himself hanging back at the rear of the assembled crowd in case Rukia decided to approach him. The first student to be called was a civilian kid that he couldn't remember the name of. If he were honest, he was kind of expecting to be the first one called up by Rukia. Perhaps the scarred Chunin was warming up before he decided to invite the Jinchuriki to the ring. He supposed that it didn't matter, sooner or later it would be his turn all the same. The whiskered teen watched as he observed the Chunin casually bat away the student's blows with an open palm. He then sensed a presence idle up to him as he heard a feminine voice speak. "I told you I'd find you later. I'm sure you have questions." He smirked as he looked to the side and spotted Rukia now standing next to him. Her words were loud enough for him to hear, but quiet enough that others couldn't. Then again, with everyone else focused on the class bars, he doubted that anyone would be paying attention to them. "I'll start with the most obvious. How can everyone see you now?" He questioned since that one had been on his mind for a while now. "I'm inhabiting a Kigai. A temporary body that allows me to blend in amongst humans. Since I lost my powers, I need to remain in this Kigai to rest and recuperate." She answered him in a soft voice, prompting the blonde Uzumaki to nod since she did mention something about needing to get supplies before leaving him yesterday. "How did things go? That old man, he was your village leader, yes? What happened after I modified his memories?" She asked, gesturing towards the Hokage mountain where the stone faces could be seen throughout the village. "Funny story. Apparently there's a certain genin called Rock Lee that goes on wild rampages whenever he drinks alcohol. Don't ask about it. Thanks to your intervention, the Sandaime didn't ask me any further questions about what happened and is trying to sweep everything under the rug. He's got me in a nice hotel for the time being until he finds me a new apartment, also gave me a pretty sweet increase in my stipend." He answered, his words earning a nod from the Ravenet who was glad that it all turned out okay. "I see. The memory replacement is well random in nature. Whatever memories that are formed are derived from both past memories and imagination. Still, it's good that it worked out." Rukia spoke with a small sigh of relief. If the blonde had been pressed for further information, it could have led to trouble for the both of them from their respective superiors. "New question. If you don't report back to your bosses soon, won't you get in trouble?" He asked her with some concern. This was but an educated guess, but he supposed that the Shinigami might be some sort of military organization. If Rukia was declared as being AWOL, then she could be punished. "I still have time. My investigation was slated to last anywhere from a few days to a few weeks. I estimate that my powers will return before then. Nobody has to know." She responded, earning a nod of understanding from the whiskered teen. "I'm guessing you're not supposed to share your powers with a human?" He asked with a raised eyebrow. If that was the case, then Rukia would need him to be discreet to avoid potential punishment. "Yeah. It's forbidden for a Shinigami to do so. If it is discovered, it could land me in hot water. Hopefully the dire circumstances will mitigate the punishment. Regardless, at the worst, I'll probably spend a decade or two in prison. Easy time." She spoke with a casual shrug. "I was wondering about that earlier. You Shinigami don't age like humans, do you?" He inquired with a Ravenet chuckling a little bit in response as she shook her head. "I may not look like it, but I have lived approximately 10 of your lifetimes." She answered him in a somewhat cryptic manner, obviously refraining from giving him an exact number. He supposed that even female Shinigami were sensitive about their age. He decided not to pursue that line of questioning further in case he accidentally insulted her. "So then, how long do we have before more of those hollow things show up? Do we have enough time so that we can get some training in before they start appearing?" He asked since it wouldn't be good if they got caught with their pants down and were unprepared for the arrival of new hollows. "Hard to say. At a guess, maybe a few days. Don't worry though, I'll receive an alert that will inform me when and where one will appear." She replied, prompting him to nod and feel grateful that they had some sort of early warning system. At least they had a little time. "By the way, your sword," she spoke while glancing at his adachi, her words falling short as if she wanted to ask him something but wasn't sure how to phrase her question. Naruto raised an eyebrow at her and asked, What about my sword? There's something weird about it. Something I need to know. She adopted a thinking pose for a few moments before she nodded to herself and was about to voice her question until someone else cut in, that someone being none other than Rukia was pushed his way between the two, his partner Mizuki having tagged in for him. Rukia-san, sorry for interrupting, but mind if I have a quick word with you? I won't take too much of your time. The Chunin spoke with a smile, his rude interruption and fake apology, making the whiskered teen's eyes narrow as he glared daggers into the teacher's back. Sure. She responded awkwardly, since she thought it a little strange how the teacher butted in. What was it that he needed to speak to her so badly about? She didn't do anything wrong, did she? Or did he hear what they were talking about? She hoped that wasn't the case, since it would be bad if asked her things that she couldn't talk about openly with mortals. While she could modify his memories if it came down to the wire, she did not wish to unless absolutely needed. The scarred teacher guided her a short distance away from the whiskered teen and then spoke to her in a hushed voice. Rukia-san, I know you're new here and all that, but you shouldn't associate with someone like Naruto. Excuse me? She muttered in complete confusion, out of all the things that he could have said she certainly didn't expect that. What in the hell was that all about anyway? Let me be more clear, Naruto is nothing but trouble. It would be wiser for you to not get friendly with him. The Chunin stated, however, his advice sounded more like a demand to her ears. Also that wasn't any more clear. I don't get it. Why should I stay away from him? She asked, trying to get more information. The scarred man glanced over his shoulder at the whiskered teen. Haruka seemed like he wanted to say something else but wasn't able to put it into words. Just stop getting chummy with him if you know what's good for you. He warned her with a sneer, her eyes narrowing in response. Now that sounded like a threat to her. There was something definitely off here. She quietly stared at the Chunin as he gave a small scoff and then marched off back towards the sparring ring. Okay, that was really weird. She whispered to herself as the form of Naruto approached her with a deep scowl, though his expression wasn't directed at her, as he could be seen glaring at Haruka's retreating form. The Jinchuriki let out a soft growl as he asked in a clearly annoyed tone, let me guess, did he say something about staying away from me? That I'm nothing but trouble? Pretty much word for word. What the hell was that all about? She asked as there was obvious enmity between the teacher and student. Was there something that she was missing here? I'll explain later. He promised her. For the time being she accepted this with a reluctant sigh. Hopefully the blonde's explanation would clue her in as to this rather strange situation. Now that she thought about it, she could sense eyes upon them, as a number of students were already giving weird looks and whispering amongst themselves. Just what was going on? From what she could tell, it seemed that Naruto had a negative reputation around here. Why was that? Despite the extremely short time that they knew each other, he didn't seem like a bad person or someone that deserved this kind of treatment. It was definitely odd. Her musing was interrupted by the sounds of loud cheers from a number of girls who were cheering on a boy by name of Sasuke. She observed through the crowd a boy with black hair with a funny haircut that reminded her of a duck's rear end who was currently sparring against the silver-haired teacher. It seemed that this boy was quite popular amongst the female students. The cheering suddenly spiked in volume as a girl with bright pink hair started to screech at the top of her lungs, making the raven-haired Shinigami cringe in discomfort as she felt a strong urge to clap her hands over her ears. Luckily the shrieking quieted down, making her sigh in relief as she stated, someone sure is a hit with the ladies. At her words, the whiskered blonde let out a scoff and shook his head. Trust me, it's not for his dazzling personality. That's Sasuke Uchiha, he's currently slated to be the school's Rookie of the Year. The Jinchuriki spoke as he scratched his nose with a lone finger. Sounds like someone's a bit jealous. She responded with a chuckle and gave a saucy grin, which then faltered as she took notice of Naruto's unamused expression as he replied back just a bit, but not for the reasons you think. Also, I want you to pay attention, take a closer look at Sasuke and Mizuki. She raised an eyebrow at this. Pay attention. To what? Had she missed something? She took another look at the match between the Uchiha and silver-haired teacher, her eyes narrowing as she tried to look for whatever it was she hadn't taken notice of. That's when she saw it. At first glance, it seemed like Sasuke was driving the teacher into a corner, slowly pushing the Chunin towards the edge of the ring, but on closer inspection, it was all a ruse. Mizuki was holding back and allowing himself to be pushed back, step by step. The hell? It looks like that teacher is letting him win. Is he taking a dive for that Sasuke kid? Rukia questioned, earning a nod from the blonde. Yeah. Sasuke's the golden child around here. Before you ask, I strongly doubt that he would ask the teachers to take said dive for him, he's far too prideful for that. Still, that wouldn't stop them from doing it to make the little punk look good or get in his good graces. After all, Sasuke is sitting on a fat pile of cash and there's a lot of people that would love to get a slice of it. He answered with a small frown, which caused Rukia to frown as well. Seemed like there was a story there, she would have to ask him for more details later. If she was to blend in, she was going to have to know about the major players in the class. Suffice it to say, this Sasuke person was definitely going to be someone that she would need to give a wide berth to. As expected, Mizuki fell out of the ring and made a big show of congratulating the Uchiha who was the first and so far only student to successfully knock a teacher out of the ring for this session. The Uchiha fangirls began to squeal in delight and shower praises on their crush, which made both the Uzumaki and Shinigami sweat drop. "Hey Naruto. You're up. Also, no weapons allowed, so you'll have to leave that sword behind," Rukia called out as he took his position in the ring and gave a friendly reminder about the rule of there being no weapons permitted. The whiskered teen wouldn't put it past the teachers to make his weapon go missing while his back was turned. Fortunately, he had someone that he could entrust it to. "Mind holding on to my sword for me?" he asked the Ravenet as he offered his new adachi to her. She smiled and gave a nod as she accepted it and promised to look after it for him. The whiskered teen then cracked his neck as he entered the ring, already suspecting that the scarred teacher was probably gonna try some kind of dirty trick. The blonde then took a defensive stance while the teacher had taken his own taijutsu stance and was shuffling about a little to loosen up. "Ready. Set. Fight." Rukia called out as he dashed forward and delivered a powerful swing towards the whiskered teen's head. Naruto deftly ducked under the blow and sidestepped Rukia, almost causing the Chunin to lose his balance before he regained it. "Not bad Naruto-kun." Rukia spoke in a praising voice, but the warmth in his voice was completely phony. The Jinchuriki guessed that the Chunin was planning to knock him into next week with one shot, but it underestimated him and put too much strength into the blow. The teacher straightened up and decided not to get careless as he delivered a barrage of blows towards the blonde teen. Rukia's eyes widened a bit as she took note that the Chunin wasn't holding back against the Uzumaki. The teacher was clearly using his full strength to try and hurt Naruto. "Hey. Take it easy. You could hurt him like that," she cried out, but her voice was drowned out by the cheers and jeers of the other students. "Come on Naruto-sensei. Kick his ass. Teach the dead last a lesson. Make him suffer for humiliating Sasuke-kun." These were but some of the words she was able to discern from the crowd as she looked on, noting the grins and looks the students were giving as they watched and waited for the Chunin to land a blow against the dead last. As this went on, Rukia couldn't help but wonder what was wrong with these people. Did they seriously want to see Naruto, a fellow classmate, get hurt? Why? Did they seriously hate him that much? There was but a sparse few in the crowd that didn't cheer to see the blonde harmed, but the Ravenet couldn't put names to faces since this was her first day here. "Come on Naruto. Knock his block off," she shouted, hoping that Naruto could at least hear her voice over the crowd so that he would know there was at least one person in his corner. Meanwhile, Naruto continued dodging the scarred teacher's blows with shocking ease, the teacher's constant barrage becoming more desperate as his frustration mounted, the thought that lingered on his face being all too plain to see. "Why can't I hit him?" The Jinchuriki was certain that under normal circumstances, his own ass would have been handed to him long before now, but these were not normal circumstances. He didn't notice it before now, but his body felt much lighter now, and from his perspective, Rukia's fists were coming unusually slowly. There was only one plausible explanation: when Rukia transferred her powers to him, it must have amplified his natural physical abilities somehow. As strange as things had become, he wasn't about to look a gift horse in the mouth, especially since it gave him the edge he needed. The blonde grinned and knocked aside one of the Chunin's fists, surprising the teacher himself and the other students. The moment of shock was all the opening the Uzumaki needed as he delivered a strong blow to Rukia's midsection, knocking the wind out of him as he clutched at his gut. Not wanting to give the man a chance to recover and counterattack with a vengeance, the Uzumaki grabbed him by the Chunin vest and threw him clean out of the ring, sending the scarred teacher flying and crashing to the ground with enough force to cause a huge cloud of dust to rise up, making a number of gathered students cough and cover their eyes. When the dust settled, Rukia could be seen sprawled out on the ground with swirls in his eyes. At this, many students could only stare in disbelief. Naruto had just defeated a teacher in a much shorter span of time than Sasuke did. Could that possibly mean the dead last's victory over the Rookie of the Year was legit? Winner is Naruto. Mizuki spoke out half-heartedly due to his surprise as he helped his partner to his feet. For a moment, the whiskered teen saw the scarred man tremble with rage before hearing him inhale and sigh before turning around to face him, plastering a huge smile on his face as he approached the boy. "Wow Naruto. Congrats on your win. You certainly surprised me." Rukia spoke in a too friendly tone, which made the whiskered teen frown. "Surprised? Yeah. Sure. Surprised that he had lost after not bothering to hold back. You know what comes next, right?" the teacher asked as he extended his hand towards the whiskered teen before adding, "It's the seal of reconciliation. A showing that we are still comrades, regardless of the outcome of the match." The blonde supposed that the explanation was meant more for Rukia to hear since she was the new girl in class. Regardless, the Uzumaki couldn't help but sneer in disgust. Are you serious? The whiskered teen questioned angrily, feeling rage in his heart, the same rage that overcame him as yesterday when the Uchiha insulted him. Excuse me? Haruka questioned, taken slightly aback by the boy's tone. Stop with the friendly big brother act. Us? Comrades? Is that a sick joke? You've never treated me as a comrade, much less a student. Who's the one that forced that dead last moniker on me? You. Who's the one that enables the other students to treat me like dirt? You. If it weren't for that stupid fucking clone jutsu, I wouldn't even be here. Whenever I came to you for help with the clone jutsu, you would snub me and brush me off. You weren't even holding back against me at all just now. Hell, you just told Rukia to stay away from me out of sheer petulance. Here's my response to your seal of reconciliation and your teaching. Naruto ranted and then spat on the Chunin's hand, making him recoil in disgust as the whiskered teen stomped off. In case it needs to be said, we will never be comrades. Naruto spoke in a grave tone before he continued on with a low growl. As he departed, Haruka's eyes narrowed at the blonde's sudden change in attitude and behavior. A part of him wondered if teenage hormones were involved or perhaps it was something else. Fine then, let him act like a brat. It would only further ostracize him from the other students, which would only work in the teacher's favor. He watched as the blonde returned to the new girl's side as he accepted his sword from her. The Chunin then put on another fake smile as he called out, sorry you had to see the Rukia-san. Why don't you join me for the next round? The purple-eyed girl looked between him and the Uzumaki a few times as if contemplating something before shaking her head and replying, forget it. I forfeit. I'm not gonna waste my time with someone that treats my friend like that. I may be new here and ignorant of what's going on, but even I can tell there's something wrong here. She shouted and then turned her back to the Chunin with a huff while crossing her arms. Naruto did a double take at that she had called him her friend that meant quite a lot to him as a genuine smile filled his face. Come on Rukia. Let's ditch this crowd. I think I'll skip class for the rest of the day. I'm just not in the mood anymore. He spoke while offering an invitation for her to join him. She tilted her head and asked, is that okay? Won't you get in trouble? He could expel you if you keep pushing the envelope. She pointed out the last part in concern, which made the whiskered teen guffaw in amusement. Much as he would love to do that, he can't do it without the Hokage's approval. That aside, they literally can't expel me. He spoke the last part in a somewhat cryptic manner as he departed, deciding that he wasn't going to waste any more of his time or energy with a bigoted teacher like Rukia. Rukia hesitated since she didn't wish to stand out but came to conclude two things. 1. She was already standing out just simply by associating with Naruto. Second, she wasn't meant to take up permanent residence here anyway, and sticking close to him was obviously more prudent. That aside, she had no desire to associate with people that would treat her friends so poorly regardless. If he was to be an outcast, then he wouldn't be alone as an outcast. Right behind you. She spoke with a small smile as she followed after him, leaving behind a stunned crowd of students, while Rukia could be seen grinding his teeth in frustration. Well, it seems that both Naruto and Rukia have decided to become good-for-nothing delinquents. Now where were we? Haruka spoke, getting the attention of his class yet again. In the midst of the crowd, a certain wallflower was poking her fingers together as she was in deep contemplation, and a blonde mindwalker was grinning as she seemed to be taking notes for potential gossip, knowing that the usual monotony of the academy may finally be broken. Yes. She was certain that things were going to be far more entertaining now. Meanwhile, with Naruto and Rukia, after exiting the school grounds, they stopped in front of a vending machine for a cool drink. The blonde Uzumaki slipped in the needed money and bought himself a soda and a bottle of tea for his new friend as they sat down on a bench, which was quite conveniently in the shade. She unscrewed the cap off and took a long sip of the refreshingly cool drink while crossing one leg over the other. The blonde pulled on the tab of his soda can, popping it open with a hiss as he took a sip of the citrus-flavored drink before speaking in a blunt tone, I'm sure you're the one with questions now. Her expression softened as she turned to him and placed a gentle hand on his shoulder. I think I'll start with. Are you okay? She asked him at the end in concern, which made the whiskered teen smile a bit as he nodded. Kinda lost my head for a minute, but yeah. I'll be okay. Been bottling some stuff up for a long time. Feels good to finally let it out. He answered with a somewhat relieved tone. She pursed her lips and asked him, why are people so horrible to you? All those other students, they wanted to see you get beat up. That teacher, he wanted to hurt you. Why? At this line of questioning, he sighed since he figured she would ask him about that. No point in hiding anything, not that he was keeping secrets from her to begin. Instead of answering her directly, he instead asked her, you remember Ruka's history lecture earlier? About the Kyuubi attack? How much do you know about Biju? At his words, the raven-haired Shinigami took a sip of her tea and thought for a moment as she searched her mind for what little information she knew about the famed beasts. I remember, yes. Admittedly, I know extremely little about your Biju. What I do know is that they're pretty infamous, even in Soul Society. They are creatures of almost calamitous power. There are some in Soul Society that debate or argue if the Biju are some sort of subspecies of Hollow, but this has never been concluded, nor any evidence has turned up to support this. She answered him truthfully since she was largely ignorant of the beasts. No easy way to put this, but I was born that night. About 15 years ago, on October the 10th. The very night of the Kyuubi attack. The whiskered teen spoke with a sigh, his words making Rukia's eyes widen. You were born that very night. She parroted in surprise, with the blonde boy nodding in confirmation. Yep. That night, the Yondaime Hokage used me as a vessel to seal away the Kyuubi. To put it as simply as possible, I am a walking prison for the Kyuubi. I'm what's called a Jinchuriki to a large portion of the village populace. I'm a constant reminder of all the people that died that night and they resent me for the losses they suffered, using me as a scapegoat for their grudges. Many of them act like I'm some kind of accomplice, never minding the fact that I was but a newborn baby. He stated with a weary expression as he took another sip of his drink. I don't understand. Didn't your Yondaime defeat the Kyuubi? Would he seal it away? Why not just kill it? She questioned in an almost rapid-fire manner as she was now confused by this new information. The keyword that was used in class was defeat, not kill or sealed, as you mentioned just a few moments ago. Biju are insanely powerful. It's almost impossible to kill them. The real issue though is that even if they are killed they don't stay dead. From my understanding, when a Biju does die it just reforms at an unspecified time and place. Hence, the only practical method to stop them is to seal them away. I dunno about you, but I wouldn't want to tango with a Biju carrying a grudge. He clarified, allowing his new friend to absorb the information. At Rukia, did he lose people too? Is that why he is so awful to you? She asked him, which made the whiskered teen cup his chin and thought as he answered her, I wouldn't be surprised if he did. A lot of people died that night. Civilians and shinobi. Rukia gripped her bottle tightly with an almost white-knuckle grip as she crushed it in her hand, spilling the contents as she muttered that that's wrong. That's just wrong. Forcing their hate on you. Making you suffer for something that you didn't do. She spoke through gritted teeth as she then turned to look at him with softening and sympathetic eyes as she asked him, did they hurt you? In the physical sense. Nah. No mobs with pitchforks or torches came after me, the Hokage would never allow that. I had protection. An odd drunkard would occasionally take a swing at me, but I was never hurt and my protection would deal with them pretty promptly. The most that folks would do is keep their kids away from me or sell me nearly expired goods or overcharge me for stuff. That stunt that Rukia just pulled in the sparring ring though, that was new. He must be getting bolder. Naruto answered as he took a big gulp of his soda. Curious, you had protection. You also mentioned something a little odd that they literally couldn't expel you. She asked him, which earned a small chuckle from the Jinchuriki. Yup. Technically speaking, since I'm a Jinchuriki, that means I'm essentially a military asset. I'm supposed to be a deterrent against other Biju, Jinchuriki, and invasion. Not to sound arrogant, but that makes me pretty valuable, especially since I carry the Kyuubi, which is the strongest of the bunch. That offers me some protection in a number of ways. Unless I do something seriously bad, there's nothing Rukia can do to expel me without permission from the Hokage. He explained, adding more context for his new friend as she quickly understood now. They kept calling you dead last, what does that mean exactly? She asked him as she recalled how the other students kept shouting that epithet. From the sound of it, it was definitely meant to be derogatory in nature. Oh, yeah, I almost forgot about that. You see, I tried and failed to pass 2 graduation exams, as a result, the teachers gave me that nickname and it caught on pretty quickly. Now people use it to belittle me and remind me of my academic failures. He explained and then crushed his now empty soda can before depositing into a nearby recycling bin with a sigh. Is there anything they won't do to put you down or torment you? Rukia asked, her voice just above a whisper, though the question seemed more rhetorical, so the whiskered teen didn't bother answering. Ma. I don't think it matters anymore, maybe it never did. Besides, we have way more important things that we can be doing besides sitting around in a classroom. We could be training and preparing for whenever the hollows may come. Also, I'm strongly confident that you could learn way more from a book than from Rukia's lectures. The class bars are meant more for showing off than actual training anyway, since they're constantly used to stroke Sasuke's ego. Naruto explained, making a mental note to take Rukia to a local library to borrow some books so that she may better learn about the village and its history. That reminds me, what's the story about that Sasuke boy? Why would the teachers show him such favor? Is it really just about money? She asked since she didn't fully understand why the boy was being offered such special treatment. Kinda, but there's more to it than just material wealth. You see, Sasuke's clan, the Uchihas comprised the village's military police force and were a co-founding clan of the village. Bunch of big shots. A few years ago, Sasuke's elder brother Itachi slaughtered the majority of the Uchiha clan in a single night, young and old, without discrimination. The only survivor was Sasuke himself who had been spared. But Sasuke being the only Uchiha left in the village and the son of the Uchiha clan head Fugaku, he has a massive fortune just waiting for him. An entire district, a veritable library of jutsu, and a huge piggy bank. A lot of people want to get in on that and have been trying to set up their daughters with him to marry him, or at least what's the term? Baby trap him. He asked at the end of his explanation, since he was uncertain if that was the correct phrase. Wait, they actually want to have his kids? Why? To continue the legacy of a co-founding clan? Rukia asked with a raised eyebrow, feeling increasingly perturbed at just how shallow the people of this village were and just how low they would sink. In a way, yeah. What a lot of people really want is for him to sire some bastards so that his Sharingan will be passed on. A special ability of the Uchiha clan that enables the user to see and copy jutsu techniques at a glance. It is also the very same eyes that Madara Uchiha, one of the village co-founders and the first rogue ninja of Konoha, used to control and manipulate the Kyuubi back in the day. Naruto answered, prompting the Ravenette to slowly nod as she digested this information. So there are people who not only want him for his clan and status, but to also spew out potential Sharingan users to use as soldiers with special abilities. Question: do you think they also want to use this Sharingan to control and manipulate you? You are the Kyuubi Jinchuriki after all. She asked him, prompting him to shrug a bit. I definitely wouldn't count out that possibility. On the surface, Konoha may seem like a nice enough place, but if you look a little deeper, you'll find that the beauty and tranquility only go skin deep. There's a lot of bad people here that are rotting the village to the core if it wasn't already rotten. He spoke and gestured with a sweeping motion with his arm towards the village. Yeah. I can see that. She muttered bitterly before straightening up and then inquiring, so what are you going to do? For now. I need to help you with the hollows. After. Who knows? Maybe I'll aim for becoming Hokage, if only as a form of revenge against anyone that has ever bullied or picked on me or mistreated me. He answered with a small chuckle. Why stop there? Why settle for just that? What purpose would it serve? You could do better. You could join the Gate 13 and Soul Society. I think you would make a great addition to our ranks. You could even become a captain. Though we'd have to be careful. We can't exactly let it be known that I passed my powers to you. That would get us both in trouble. She spoke encouragingly, her words making him raise an eyebrow. Gate 13. He parroted, making the Ravenette nod with a smile. Yes. The Shinigami Corps comprises 13 squads, the Gate 13. There are 12 captains who head their own squad who are in turn headed by the captain commander who leads the 1st division. I'm part of the 13th division. She explained, adding a bit more context for the blonde. You seriously think I could become one of your Gate 13's captains? Naruto asked, feeling touched that she had such confidence in him despite the fact he had only just gained Shinigami powers. Absolutely. I know you can. Once you train and learn about your powers, that is. Once you learn to control your powers, you would be a huge asset. Think of it. You'd have a clean slate. A chance to start over. She spoke with a beaming smile, making the whiskered teen hum thoughtfully as he looked up at the sky. A chance to start over, eh? That was a tempting offer. Very tempting. Definitely something to think about. Well, it would be good to keep my options open if things don't start looking up around here. He spoke with a small smirk. While a part of him relished the idea of leaving the village, he also felt like that would be the same as running away from his problems instead of facing them, or it would also be like admitting defeat to those that tormented him. He refused to let the villagers have victory against him in any shape or form. Just think about it. I won't force you to commit to anything you don't want to. In fact, I didn't say this before, but I'm grateful that you were so cooperative in offering your assistance. She stated, her eyes full of warmth as he smiled back at her. We're friends, right? You said so yourself a bit ago. I may be a pariah, but at least I'm a loyal one. I always look out for those I care about or do right by me. He stated as he offered his pinky to her, making Rukia smirk as she extended her own pinky as they connected to make a pinky promise. Then let's be pariahs together. She spoke with a small chuckle, the Uzumaki's grin widening even further at that. Pariahs together. He never had anyone promise him such a thing. This gave him the assurance that he wouldn't have to be alone again, not with a friend like Rukia at his side. Once that was done, the Uzumaki set his new adachi across his lap and spoke in a curious tone. By the way, before Iruka butted in, what were you about to say about my sword? Oh? Right. I almost forgot. Yours Anpakudo, it's way different from the norm. I've never seen one of that length before. She stated as she finished her tea and tossed the empty bottle into the nearby recycling bin. Zanpakuto. The whiskered teen repeated, the name translating to soul cutter or soul slayer his query, prompting his new friend to cross her arms over her chest and give an affirmative nod. The Zanpakuto is a Shinigami's weapon. It is used to fight hollows and send human souls to Soul Society. However, that is no ordinary piece of metal. It is an extension of you. It is as much a part of you as your arm, your lungs, or your heart. Each Zanpakuto is completely unique, like their owner, and carries a spirit that dwells within. To attain mastery of your Zanpakuto, you must discover its name by communicating with it, which will enable you to unlock even greater power. Mastery of your Zanpakuto is a requirement to become a captain in the Gate 13. She explained as she gave him the basic rundown. The whiskered teen drew his sword and admired the blade as he held it up towards the sky, the sunlight glinting off of it as he inspected the pristine and razor-sharp weapon. A name, huh? I wonder what this one's name is. Anyways, is the size of my sword really that odd? He questioned at the end as he sheathed his blade, noting how light the adachi was in his hand despite its size. Technically there is no set or standard form of Zanpakuto. Still, it is much larger than the norm. I hear that the size and length of one's Zanpakuto can be affected by the spiritual power that courses through them. Given that you were able to see and interact with me even before I transferred my abilities to you, suggests that you must have had a high amount of power to begin with. It makes me wonder if your Kyuubi may be an indirect influence. Another weird thing is that you're able to manifest it while still in your physical body. I've never heard of anyone being able to do that, but then this is a highly unusual case. She mused at the end while adopting a thinking pose. He simply shrugged since there was no real way to tell if the Bijuu did or did not have an influence on his new abilities. On another note, this talk of there being a spirit within his sword, he remembered hearing about how the samurai of the Land of Iron would forge their own blades themselves, that way, they were instilling a piece of themselves into the metal, a part of their very soul, and being added into the metalwork. It would seem that this was doubly true for the Shinigami themselves. There's one more thing I want to ask you said you were an orphan what happened to your parents? Did no one ever adopt or take care of you? She asked him as she pursed her lips before adding sorry, if you don't want to talk about it, I understand. He smiled softly as he replied nah, it's fine. Not exactly a secret. Let's see, I spent a few years in an orphanage, but I got moved out into my own apartment when I was 10. 10, I think. The Hokage gave me a stipend to live off of till I officially became a shinobi. I don't know exactly what happened to my parents, hell, I don't even know their names. I'm pretty confident that my mother must have died from childbirth-related complications, and my dad was a shinobi that perished in the Kyuubi attack. Can't think of any other legit reasons why they aren't around, and I refuse to believe that they up and abandoned me. As for adoption, well, if anyone did want to adopt me, they probably chickened out because of peer pressure or something from the rest of the village. Suffice it to say, I had to learn to look out for myself pretty early on. The Ravenette's eyes glistened a bit as she gave a sympathetic expression. Kami, Naruto's tale had to be the saddest story she had ever heard in all of her life. The isolation, the psychological abuse and poor treatment. It amazed her that he didn't snap or become some sort of violent thug, or worse. Aside from his earlier outburst, he seemed unusually well adjusted. He must have a very strong mental and spiritual fortitude. This just further proved that he would indeed make an excellent Shinigami. Before she could speak further, a shadow fell over the two, and from the shape of the silhouette, it didn't take long for the Uzumaki to discern the identity of the shadow's owner, as he didn't even bother to look up from the ground. Heh. That's new. The Academy's golden boy teaching class. Gracing the dead last with his divine presence. The blonde asked mockingly with a chuckle while the female Shinigami narrowed her eyes at the form of Sasuke. The Uchiha's hands were stuffed in his pockets as he glowered at the duo. You. Dope. How'd you do it? First you beat me just yesterday, shattering my undefeated record. Then you made Rukia look like an amateur in front of the whole class, beating him way faster than I beat Mizuki. Now the other students are talking, wondering if I'm losing my touch, wondering if my loss against you was for real. In response, the whiskered teen chuckled a bit as he replied back maybe you are, Sasuke-Uchiha. Not sure what you've been told about your martial skills, but you're not all that you're cracked up to be. What did you say? The Uchiha asked as he clenched his fists in a white-knuckle grip, the Jinchuriki's words being like stinging barbs. You that sensitive about it? Kami, I heard that you had a superiority-inferiority complex, but this is ridiculous. Fine then, lem spell it out. I'll even try to use small words for you to keep things simple. Sure, you got talent Sasuke, not even I will deny that, but people have put you on a pedestal for so long, you're actually believing all the praise. What you don't know is that you're being softened up and spoiled, albeit unintentionally. I'm willing to bet good cash that once you go up against a real shinobi, one that has actually spilled blood, you'll end up choking when the chips are down. Naruto explained with a grin as he watched the elite trembled with anger. The Uchiha then grabbed the Uzumaki by the collar and yelled in Naruto's face, causing small droplets of saliva to land on the blonde's whiskered cheeks. "Who do you think you're talking to, dope? I am Sasuke Uchiha. I'm a member of the Uchiha clan. I'm a prodigy. An elite." Rukia took a defensive stance, ready to leap to her friend's defense and throw the Uchiha off of Naruto, but was stopped as the Jinchuriki raised a hand to tell her to stand down for now. The blonde Uzumaki then let out a scoff as he spit back, "Elite? Isn't that some sort of honorary title amongst the Uchihas? A prodigy? What have you actually accomplished? What does the term Uchiha clan even mean anymore? I don't think I've ever heard of a clan of just 2 people." Sasuke snarled in anger and raised a fist, ready to pulverize the blonde for his insolence, but his fist was intercepted by Rukia, who was now glaring at the Uchiha as she kept a tight grip on the Avenger's wrist. "You touch him and I'll break your arms. I swear." She promised as she emphasized her point by tightening her grip further, which in turn caused a series of popping noises. Even in a Gigai and without her Shinigami abilities, she was still a trained combatant and was stronger than the average person. She may currently be powerless, but she wasn't completely helpless. "You ever heard the phrase, 'all that glitters is not gold'?" Naruto asked in a nonchalant manner as he smacked the offending hand that held his collar, forcing the King of Brood to release him. The emo king didn't bother answering the question as he reluctantly relaxed, prompting the blonde to gesture for the female Shinigami to release Sasuke. "This isn't over, dope. I'll prove that I'm the special one, that I'm the deserving one, and that you are just a loser that should know better than to challenge his superiors." Sasuke swore as he jabbed a finger towards the whiskered teen, who didn't even seem bothered by the threat. "Keep telling yourself that," Naruto quipped in a disinterested tone, not impressed by the Uchiha's bluster. Still, it wouldn't be wise to completely discount Sasuke's threats, given that he had a lot of political backing. More than anything else, Naruto knew that there were only perhaps 2 things that Sasuke cared about after the death of his clan. The first and most obvious was power so that he may defeat his brother. The second was his pride and belief in both his own superiority and the superiority of his clan, regardless if it was non-existent or not. Most likely, the Uchiha would try to make a public spectacle and attempt to goad him into a rematch, to which he wouldn't have any choice but to oblige, if only to shut up the arrogant prick and get some payback. Sasuke then glanced at Rukia, regarding her existence for the first time as he spoke. "You're not weak like those other girls. You're not loud and annoying either. You might have some use." The whiskered teen then felt a flash of genuine anger, and without thinking he shoved the Uchiha to the ground and drew his sword, pointing the tip of the blade at the Avenger's neck. "Lem tell you something, Sasuke Uchiha. Rukia is my friend and she is a person. She's not some tool that has some use that you can exploit and then throw away." Naruto spoke with a twitching eyebrow, his words making Rukia blush a bit at the fact that her new friend was so quick to come to her defense. This seemed to please Sasuke a bit, a ghost of a smile crossing his lips as he had just discovered the dope's soft spot. He then turned to the raven-haired female and spoke to her. "You could do much better than a loser like him." He then used the back of his hand to push the blonde sword away and marched off with his hands in his pockets. "All that glitters isn't gold. I see what you mean." Rukia muttered venomously as she watched the form of the Uchiha head back towards the academy. The way he looked at her and spoke to her made her feel as if she had just been violated. I've got a feeling that Sasuke may try something. He'll probably demand a rematch at some point and use some dirty tricks too. At any rate, I want to work off some steam, maybe get a little practice in soon. Want to scope out some training spots?" the Uzumaki asked, prompting his new friend to perk up a bit and nod since she wanted to explore a bit more of the village. If they found a good spot to train, it would allow her to better visualize and plan out a potential training regimen for him. With that said, they departed to find their potential training area. However, they couldn't help but feel a sense of wariness as a dark cloud loomed over them. Not a good sign. They had no doubt that Sasuke would try to make good on his threat and they had best be prepared for whatever may come. One thing Rukia did know was if Naruto could handle an Uchiha, then he could definitely handle an arrogant bully. The two of them exchanged looks and smiled at each other, the both of them very much looking forward to thwarting whatever the self-proclaimed elite had in store. Then Chapter 2. Chapter 3. Bonding. "This looks like a good place," Rukia muttered as she looked around the area that was known as the third training ground, noting that there was plentiful open space, sufficient coverage and other such things to easily suit hers and Naruto's needs for his training. She then cast her gaze to a nearby stone, a memorial of sorts that had names carved into it. No doubt the stone carried the names of fallen shinobi who perished in the line of duty. In her opinion, it seemed a strange choice to put a memorial stone in a training ground of all places where it might be accidentally damaged, but then she supposed that mortals did many things that seldom made sense. At the very least, this would be a good area to help hammer in the basics for her new friend and substitute Shinigami. "I agree. I think this should work out just fine. The whiskered teen mused as he drew his sword and took a few practice swings, once again noting how light the blade was and how natural it felt in his hand, giving him a better understanding of why each zanpakuto was unique to each shinigami, a blade crafted by the essence of their very spirit and meant solely for their own hands. Exquisite. After that rather harrowing experience with your academy and Sasuke, I think we should take it easy for the rest of the day. It'll give me some time to plan out a proper regime for you. Now, I have some questions, so please answer honestly and accurately. Rukia instructed him in a serious tone as she pulled out a pen and notepad. The Jinchuriki sheathed his adachi, knowing that the Ravenette's friendliness had turned into a certain level of strictness as she now adopted a teacher-like persona. He responded in kind with a curt proceed, which prompted an appreciative nod from her for his continued cooperation. First off, do you have any experience with swordplay? She asked him directly, awaiting his answer, to which the Uzumaki immediately answered with a quick none. She had a feeling that may have been the case, but hoped that he would at least know some basic techniques. Hijutsu? She questioned as she jotted down some notes, with the whiskered teen answering abysmal. His response made her cringe a bit, then again it seemed like earlier that he had simply overpowered the Chunin, rather than defeat him with actual technique or skill, but she chose not to comment on this. What jutsu techniques can you use? She questioned since she wished to teach him some Shinigami arts as well. If they were potentially mixed with ninjutsu, it could make for some powerful combinations. Substitution and transformation, was the Jinchuriki's blunt answer, making the Ravenette's eyebrow twitch a bit. Damn. She was really gonna have her work cut out here, but then what did she expect? Given how people treated him, she supposed she should have known that he had little to no practical skills. On the plus side, this basically made him a blank slate that she was free to shape, mold, and polish at her own discretion. How about memorization? She inquired, this question making the Uzumaki pause as he wasn't sure how to answer. Sure, he had practically memorized the academy curriculum, but that was mainly because it had been hammered into him over the course of almost 3 years. Accepting his hesitation as a not sure, she jotted down the notes with a small sigh. I'm not going to lie to you. We have a lot of ground to cover in a short period of time. Time that we might not even have for proper training. I had hoped to teach you Kido, but we may not have the time. She explained to him, wishing that she knew exactly when Hala may begin to appear so that she would know how best to prepare her new student. I figured that would be the case. At least you're being upfront with me and not sugarcoating it. What is Kido anyway? Is that some form of Shinigami jutsu? He asked out of curiosity since he wasn't familiar with the term. Pretty close to, if not equivalent, yes. Kido, also known as the demon arts, are a set of spells that range from 1 to 99, the latter obviously being stronger, but more complex to cast. Each spell requires a specific incantation spoken to be properly cast, though with time and training, it'll be possible to use one without the incantation, though its power would diminish. Kido can be classified into 3 categories. Bakudo, the way of binding. These are support spells that can range from immobilization, barriers, and sealing. Heido, the path of destruction, which are offensive spells. Finally, Kaido, also known more simply as healing Kido to help the injured. She explained in a lecturing voice, with the blonde nodding along in understanding as he listened to her. I see. So instead of hand signs you use incantations. That sounds neat and all, but I'm not confident in my ability to remember the words, especially in the heat of battle. I'm not exactly the calm and collected type that would be able to keep my cool under pressure. He muttered in a somewhat disappointed tone. It would have been awesome if he could memorize at least one of those Kido spells, but as he explained, he was uncertain if he could avoid fumbling the incantation during a fight. That's fine. While learning Kido is encouraged, it isn't a requirement. A number of the Gate 13 squads have their own specialization. Squad 4, for example, focuses on the healing arts. Meanwhile, Squad 11 specializes in frontline combat and swordsmanship. Regardless, all Shinigami must learn to hone their kinjutsu. No ifs, ands or buts. We'll be working on your swordcraft first and foremost above all else. She spoke and then pointed a finger at the whiskered teen with a smirk. Sounds good to me. When do we get started? He asked her, eager for her to coach and train him. The sooner they got started, the better. Hell, he was almost itching to try out his Zanpakuto and learn to use it properly. Before the Ravenette could answer, their stomachs rumbled almost in unison, reminding them that they hadn't eaten yet today. Now that she thought about it, she hadn't eaten anything since gaining her Gigai. She would need nourishment to help her regain her powers. We can start tomorrow. While we may cut classes at your academy, we should at least make the occasional appearance. We probably shouldn't give that so-called teacher any more ammunition to use against you. She replied, earning a slightly irritated look from the blonde, but he nodded in acceptance. He supposed that he would have to make some compromises, and it wasn't like he could skip school entirely. Right. Anyways, I'm tired and just thinking about school is giving me a headache. Let's get something to eat. If you want, you can crash with me at my hotel room. You can take the bed there and there's a spare futon that I can use. He offered her, making her smile a bit as she gratefully accepted. Naturally, since they were technically partners, she would have to try and stay close to him as much as possible. And again, he had already offered to open his home to her anyway. It was nice to see that she could count on him rather than having to sleep in his closet or something. Excellent. Do you know any good places to eat? Given everything that has happened, it seems only right that I should at least buy you dinner. She spoke with a grin while pulling out her wallet which was thick with cash. He raised an eyebrow at this, wondering why Shinigami would bother with money, but then again, he supposed that she would have to purchase supplies somehow. Was there a special Shinigami store or something planted in the mortal realm? He wanted to ask her about it but was too hungry at this time. For the sake of convenience and his own stomach, he decided to just roll with it instead of questioning every little thing. I'm definitely not gonna turn down food. If you don't mind, I know a good ramen joint. It's the best in the village, if not the shinobi nations. He spoke with a confident expression, with a Ravenette grinning back and gesturing for him to lead the way since she was quite curious about the local cuisine. Also ramen sounded pretty good right now. Well now, skipping school, are we? Inviting a lady to a hotel room as well. Not worried about what people may say. A masculine voice spoke up, prompting the two to turn in the direction the voice came from and see a silver-haired man wearing a mask gazing at them as he stood next to the memorial stone. From the look of him, the blonde surmised that this man must be a jonin. He had heard stories of a pretty famous jonin that was also known to wear a mask. If this guy was the real deal, then he definitely wasn't a pushover. What's it to you? Not like I have a stellar reputation to begin with. It's not polite to eavesdrop either. Naruto responded with his eyebrow twitching in irritation. I assure you, to eavesdrop was not my intent. I simply came to visit some old friends. The masked man stated while gesturing towards the memorial. Yeah? Still could have kept your mouth shut. The blonde quipped with his female companion nodding in agreement as she too was becoming increasingly annoyed at people that were trying to inject themselves into their business. Well. Someone's a little touchy. No matter, the reason I spoke up was because I wanted to hear it straight from the horse's mouth. You defeated Sasuke just yesterday. The masked man asked, which caused the blonde boy to give a quick yep of confirmation. The silver-haired jonin gave an eye smile of sorts, then responded I see. I was wondering if it was true or not. I'd be careful though, it wouldn't be very wise to keep on stirring the pot. This statement made both the Uzumaki and female Shinigami narrow their eyes as they wondered if they were just a friendly warning, a threat, or both. They chose not to engage with the man any further and departed. That was weird. Naruto whispered quietly, with his companion glancing over her shoulder to make sure that they weren't being followed. Thankfully, the masked jonin stayed in his spot in front of the memorial stone. Once she was certain that they were out of earshot, she muttered yeah. Seriously, is there anyone in this village that doesn't kiss up to that little brat? Just how many people are banking on that kid? Quite a few. Most of the civilians want to kiss his ass. A few shinobi too, though I think for the shinobi, it is more for the bragging rights of teaching the last loyal Uchiha in the village. Not sure what that guy's deal is, but for some reason I feel nothing but contempt for people that wear masks. The whiskered teen stated, which caused a certain Sharingan user wearing an orange spiral mask to suddenly sneeze and feel a chill go up his spine. The duo continued on in a comfortable silence, making their way through the village streets until at last, they came to a humble ramen stand named Ichiraku's, where an almost heavenly smell wafted from inside. The tantalizing scent alone made the purple-eyed girl's mouth salivate almost uncontrollably. She couldn't recall smelling anything so delicious throughout her entire existence. He smirked as he ushered inside, allowing her to enter first as she set foot inside. Welcome to Ichiraku's. A female voice called out in a friendly tone as a brown-haired waitress approached. She then gained a surprised expression as the form of Naruto entered inside as he and his female companion took their seats on the stools. Oh my gosh. Naruto. Who is this? Is she your date? Did you bring a date? The brunette asked excitedly while clapping her hands together, her reaction making the whiskered teen blush a bit in embarrassment while the female Shinigami sweat dropped. What's this? Naruto-kun brought a date. Well now, this calls for a celebration I think. An older gentleman piped in after finishing washing his hands, no doubt he was the chef of this establishment given his attire. The purple-eyed girl couldn't help but notice that unlike so many others, these two greeted her new friend quite warmly and openly. No. It isn't like that. Rukia's just a friend. She's a transfer student that I'm hosting. The whiskered teen explained as he set his zanpakuto to the side, with the father and daughter duo taking note of the weapon. Where in the world did you get that sword? It looks so cool. AM pointed out enthusiastically, which made the Uzumaki puff up pridefully for a moment before he answered, a gift from Rukia-san. The Ichirakus nodded in understanding with the ramen chef, turning to address their newest customer as he greeted her politely, a pleasure to meet you Rukia-san. Please pardon our manners, Naruto-kun is a regular of ours. I am Tuchi Ichiraku, and this is my daughter AM. I have to say, I am happy that you became friends with Naruto-kun, not sure if he told you, but he has great difficulty making any friends. Yes. I am aware. Naruto already explained everything to me and I saw it all firsthand at the academy. She spoke with a slight hint of bitterness, which earned some frowns from the Ichirakus as they too found it distasteful as to how people treated the boy. Indeed. Ah well, let's not linger on such a depressing subject. What can we get for you? The ramen chef asked, prompting his daughter to bring out a notepad to take the duo's orders. The whiskered teen requested a miso pork ramen with Rukia ordering the same. The father and daughter pair both nodded in unison as the ramen chef went to work to prepare their meal. So you're a transfer student. Where are you from, if you don't mind me asking? Tucci asked to make some friendly conversation, wanting to get to know the newcomer. The ravenet chuckled and then answered smoothly, I was transferred from a place called Karakura town. It's a pretty small town and quite far, I doubt you would have heard of it. At her words, the whiskered teen raised an eyebrow. He wondered if that was a lie, a fabricated backstory that she had rehearsed in case anyone asked about her background. It's not like she could just tell people that she was a Shinigami. While he believed that the Ichirakus could be trusted, there wasn't really a need to tell them anything they didn't need to know, nor should any information be revealed without Rukia's okay. Even so, he felt a slight bit of guilt for keeping secrets from his closest confidants and friends, even if it was for good reason. I've never heard of that place. I bet it's nice. Tucci commented casually as he prepared the ingredients for their orders. AM smiled a bit and then asked the young Uzumaki, say, Naruto-kun. I heard a rumor that you finally beat that jerk Sasuke the other day. Is that true? Please tell me that it is. Yep. It's true, earlier today I beat Rukia too. Also, I've decided to start cutting classes. The whiskered teen announced at the end, earning a few chuckles and a shake of the head from the waitress and her father. Normally, I wouldn't encourage such behavior and say that you must attend school diligently, but then your circumstances aren't exactly normal, and I highly doubt you will gain anything more from the academy, regardless of your attendance. The ramen chef spoke with a small chortle, hoping to one day see the young Uzumaki show just what he was made of and upstage everyone who mocked him. It wasn't much longer before the duo were presented with two large steaming bowls of ramen. Both the blonde and ravenet collected their chopsticks and broke them apart and gave a quick-eyed akimasu before digging into their respective bowls. Rukia couldn't even suppress a shudder and moan of delight as she enjoyed the myriad of flavors that cascaded across her tongue. They enjoyed their meal together, with the whiskered boy and Ichirakus exchanged some idle chatter. The ravenet listened quietly as she observed this interaction, a small smile forming on her face as she liked seeing her new friend have a moment of peace and happiness since he had to live in what could only be described as a toxic environment. She couldn't understand how the people of this village could so callously treat an innocent boy and force their hate on him like that. While the adversity did make Naruto stronger in so many ways, it also deprived him of the simple, blissful, and innocent joys of childhood. Then again, she supposed that in some ways, she understood at least some of his struggles given her history prior to being taken into the Kichiki household. She shook her head, choosing not to dwell on such thoughts since she didn't wish to sour the mood. That was all in the past, and there was no need to drag down her new friend with her own history whilst he was still fighting against the present. Once they were finished with their meal, Rukia pulled out her wallet to pay for dinner as she had promised earlier, but was stopped when Tucci raised a hand and shook his head. No need to pay, it's on the house. Consider it a welcome to Konoha present and a thank you for befriending Naruto. The ramen chef spoke and gave a thumbs up with his daughter nodding as well in approval. This made the ravenet's eyes widen at their generosity, reluctantly she accepted since it would have been rude to refuse their kind off. After bidding goodbye to the father and daughter pair, she and her charge departed from the humble ramen stand. So, Naruto, how did you meet them? They seemed like kind people. She asked the whiskered teen out of innocent curiosity. The Hokage would always bring me here for my birthday. This was one of the few places that wouldn't kick me out. Naturally, we became friends pretty fast, and this became my go-to joint. He won't say it out loud, but old man Tucci gets worried I'm not eating enough veggies, so he tries to slip as much as he can into my ramen or encourage me to eat the vegetable ramen. The whiskered teen explained with a small chuckle. It is nice to see that there are some people that care for you. It sounds like you're rather close to your village leader as well. She pointed out since the Sandaime went out of his way to treat the whiskered boy to a birthday meal. Yeah. The Hokage has been something of a grandfather figure to me. He can't always be there, but he tries. Thing is, he never outright told me, but if I understand correctly, the village still hasn't recovered from the Kyuubi attack from all those years ago. A lot of people died that night. The Uchiha massacre also hit the village pretty hard, not only from the tragic loss of life, but also the village's reputation took a big hit. Suffice it to say, if some yahoo decided to take advantage of our weakened state, it could be a bloodbath. The blonde explained, earning an awe of understanding from Rukia. As much as the Sandai may want to do more for the boy, in some ways, his hands must have been tied and had to choose prioritizing the entirety of the village over one boy. A shame. The whiskered teen then perked up as a thought came to his mind as he glanced at his Zanpakuto and stated, "You know Rukia, I just had a thought. If I got your powers from you transferring them to me through your Zanpakuto, can't I just use mine to transfer them back?" He questioned at the end as he drew his blade. The blonde smirked a bit at his genius idea and was ready to follow through on it as soon as the Ravenet gave the okay. To his surprise, she shook her head and spoke, "I appreciate the gesture, but I would not recommend doing that. I wasn't able to tell you before, but a Shinigami transferring their powers to a human is extremely risky. There was a high chance of you dying should it have failed. That aside, it is wholly unnecessary, my own powers will return in time. There's no need to take a shortcut." Naruto raised an eyebrow at this, making the female Shinigami shrink a bit as she expected him to yell at her for not telling him that he could have died at that time. Instead, he simply shrugged and spoke while sheathing his adachi. "That's so? Ah well, it was just an idea that came to mind. I also figured that there may have been risks involved. That sort of thing didn't seem like something a Shinigami would do lightly. You're not mad at all? Even in spite of the fact you could have been killed?" She questioned, finding his lack of outrage to be highly unusual. He didn't seem fazed in the slightest at this information. "I'm training to be a shinobi, and now a Shinigami, I guess. Death is a constant possibility. There will always be risks. What happened, happened, and in the end, it all worked out, so there's no need to get angry. Not sure if I told you outright, but it's not death that I was ever really scared of, even less now that I know with certainty that a place like Soul Society exists," he explained while rubbing the back of his head. "Then what are you truly afraid of?" she asked him, finding it a tad strange that he wasn't afraid of dying. Most humans were afraid of death and would often go to great lengths to delay the inevitable, but then most people weren't truly aware of Soul Society's existence and what lies beyond in the realm of the dead. "I guess losing the people I care about and being all alone. Forever," he admitted with a small frown, not ever wishing to experience that darkness and the crushing weight of pure loneliness ever again. If it weren't for the Ichiraku's and the Hokage's small acts of kindness and compassion, the whiskered teen was certain he would have lost himself a long time ago. Her eyes softened as she heard the pain in his voice. She had a rough start herself before becoming a Shinigami, but at least she had some friends to help her through it, nor did she have to combat constant hate and ridicule as he did. While the whiskered teen was doing his best to fight against it, all his sorrows and frustrations were piling up. It seemed almost a miracle that he hadn't broken. "Do you want a hug?" she offered him, unused to showing affection since she had dedicated herself towards her duties as a Shinigami. "May I?" he asked, prompting the Ravenet to embrace him, wrapping her arms around him for a few moments as the Jinchuriki almost seemed to melt into her. "You know, I think this might be the first time anyone has ever held me. I can't describe how nice this feels." He spoke just above a whisper, his words making the purple-eyed Shinigami's heart ache for him all the more. After a few more moments, the whiskered teen broke the embrace and gave a contented sigh as he spoke, "Thank you, Rukia. That meant a lot." At his words, she simply nodded with a warm smile and responded with a brief "anytime." He then straightened up and slung his Zanpakuto over his shoulder before asking, "I was wondering," but didn't want to say anything in front of the Ichirakus, "but was that bit about being from this Karakura town, was that a lie?" "Oh, that. Yes. It was a lie. For obvious reasons, I couldn't tell them exactly where I came from. I kind of blurted out the first name that came to my mind." She responded truthfully, earning a nod from the whiskered teen since he figured that may have been the case. Is this Karakura town even a real place? He wondered since that didn't sound like a name she came up with on the spot. It is indeed a real place. Truthfully, I was originally assigned to patrol Karakura town, but before my deployment, it was changed at the last minute and I was transferred to Konoha to conduct my investigation into the lack of hollow activity. She explained, her words making the Uzumaki raise an eyebrow in some confusion. "Really? That sounds kind of unusual," he pointed out, wondering what exactly the reasoning was behind the sudden transfer. Then again, he supposed he didn't have much reason to complain, had she not been assigned to Konoha, then they likely wouldn't have ever met. "Unusual? Perhaps a bit, but orders are orders," she replied in a nonchalant manner, with the whiskered teen shrugging his shoulders. He supposed that if she didn't have a problem with it, then there was no need to push the envelope. They continued towards his hotel in a comfortable silence. They entered inside and strolled by the reception desk where the staff seemed to ignore the blonde's presence as they minded their own business, a very wise choice since the Sandaime himself personally told the staff that if they gave Naruto even the slightest trouble or if he complained about ill treatment, then the Hokage would punish them harshly. After a brief elevator ride up a few floors, they turned a corner and came up to his room, which was conveniently close to the elevators. He fished his key out of his ninja tool pouch and unlocked the door. He pushed it open and allowed Rukia to enter first, making her chuckle a bit and whisper to herself, such a gentleman. Once they were both inside, he shut the door and locked it back. He then glanced at Rukia, taking note that perhaps she didn't have much in the way of clothes, and then spoke, if you want, you can borrow some of my PJs. They should be able to fit you decently. Thank you, between getting this gig and implanting myself in your school, I haven't had the time to get some extra clothing. She spoke with a small sigh as she dipped into his closet and pulled out a set of orange pajamas. Why were so many of his clothes orange anyway? A blue color would have matched his eyes. Ah well, beggars couldn't be choosers, and she didn't wish for him to think her as being ungrateful for his kindness. She then stepped into the bathroom to change in privacy and slipped out of her day clothes before putting on the pajamas. She was pleased to see that they did indeed fit her quite well, a benefit to having a petite frame, and that the fabric and material was soft and seemed quite warm. She exited the bathroom and saw her host preparing a futon for himself while setting the needed blankets and pillows. He looked up at her and asked her, "They fit you okay?" In response she simply nodded and gave a quick nod before yawning tiredly and climbing into the nearby bed and snuggling up under the covers. He then went into the bathroom to change into a spare set of PJs he retrieved from his closet, and then once he was done, he lazily flopped down and onto his futon with a tired sigh. "You better rest up and sleep well, Naruto. Once we start training, I'm gonna be drilling you hard. Don't expect me to take it easy on you or offer special treatment." She spoke in a half-joking and half-serious tone that made him chuckle. Honestly speaking, he wasn't expecting her to go easy on him, and he would be greatly disappointed if she did. He smirked a bit and gave a thumbs up and then pulled the covers over himself, keeping his Zanpakuto close at hand instead of leaving it sitting in a corner. Once the two were settled, silence filled the room save for the ticking of a clock as they both quietly drifted off to sleep, feeling tired from the day's events that left them drained. Before long, the sounds of soft snoring filled the room. The next morning, the duo woke up and got dressed and ready for the day, the both of them taking turns to change in the bathroom for privacy. The Ravenet was the first to go and put on her civilian outfit, followed by the Uzumaki, who decided to wear his Shinigami robes for the day so that he may get used to fighting in them while they trained. Additionally, these robes were way lighter and breathed much better than his usual jumpsuit. If anyone asked about his new robes, he would just say that they were a gift from Rukia, which technically wouldn't be lying. He picked up Zanpakuto and slung it over his shoulder, holding it by the Seigyo cords as they exited the hotel room together and made their way towards the academy. "So the plan is to attend the morning roll call and lecture, then afterwards we ditch school for the rest of the day to train." Naruto spoke as he recounted the plan that they cooked up together after awakening from their slumber, with the Ravenet nodding. It was kind of skirting the line, but so long as they at least made an appearance and did the bare minimum at the academy, then there wouldn't be any genuine consequences. Not that any of it mattered anyway since, quite obviously, his biggest hurdle has always been the clone jutsu. Right, let's get this over with then. If we get there soon enough, we should be able to snag some decent seats together. He spoke with a yawn, prompting the Ravenet to nod in agreement since it would be better if they sat together for easier communication. If she received an alert about a hollow incursion, she would need to inform him about it. After exiting the hotel room and after a brief elevator ride, they began their march towards the academy. The two of them wondering if either Sasuke or the teachers would try anything today. As they walked together, they spotted a pair of girls making their way in the same direction that they were going. The first girl in the duo was a tomboyish-looking girl with spiky black hair, and the second was a girl with burnt orange hair and a curvy figure that was clumsily using a pair of crutches, some parts of her body wrapped up in bandages, and one of her legs was in a cast. They heard the orange tea speak to her friend in a reassuring tone, "I'll be okay, Tatsuki-chan, you just go on ahead. I'll catch up. You don't want to be late on your first day." The girl referred to as Tatsuki shook her head negatively as she replied to the orange-haired girl, "Nah. Not gonna happen, Orihim. You're still not used to those crutches yet, and no way am I about to leave you all alone, especially in an unfamiliar place. We'll just have to make an excuse and apologize to the teachers once we get to our new school. Okay?" In the background, Naruto couldn't help but feel a bit of sympathy. It seemed like the orange tea had been pretty badly injured and now her friend was trying to look after her. He wondered perhaps if they would accept a little help. He cleared his throat as he approached the two with Rukia following close behind him as he asked, "Excuse me, do you two need some help? You trying to get to the Konoha Academy?" Upon hearing his voice, the two girls looked in his direction. The girl called Orihime smiled brightly as she replied yes. "Yes we are." Itsuki nodded her head in confirmation as she scratched the back of her head and then spoke, "Honestly speaking, we kind of could use some help. Especially Orihime for obvious reasons. Do you two go to school at this academy?" "Sure do. If you want, I can carry you Orihime-san. My name is Naruto Uzumaki and this is Rukia Kichiki." The whiskered teen offered and then introduced himself along with his companion, the female Shinigami, giving a friendly wave. "Are you sure? I might be too heavy for you." The orange tea spoke out, her tone suggesting that perhaps she was a bit self-conscious or didn't wish to impose upon the blonde, or both. Not that it really mattered to him. Without bothering to reply, he passed his adachi off to Rukia, who accepted it without needing to be asked or told. He then gestured to Tatsuki to take the crutches, which she did, allowing him to scoop up Orihime smoothly in a bridal carry, which made her blush a bit at this, since a boy had never carried her like this before. "Do me a favor, please don't underestimate me again." He spoke in a half-joking and half-warning tone, making the orange-haired girl vigorously nod in understanding. "Also, you're not even that heavy." He added with a small sweat drop, noting how light the girl was in his arms. His words making her blush even deeper while hiding her face in embarrassment. This made the tomboyish martial artist chuckle a bit and speak in a saucy tone. "Hey, Rukia-san, is it your boyfriend always a smooth operator?" This question made both the female Shinigami and Jinchuriki give quizzical looks as they both wondered if they really looked like a couple. He's not my boyfriend. I only met him about 2 days ago, but we did become fast friends. I'm a transfer student and he's been kind enough to host me during my stay." Rukia explained quickly to set the record straight. A guy and a girl bunking together? He hasn't tried to put any moves on you, has he?" Tatsuki asked warily as she wondered if the blonde was a playboy. Her questions only made the female Shinigami laugh and shake her head as she answered, "No, nothing like that. Naruto has been nothing but a gentleman. I assure you, there's no funny business going on and your friend is in good hands." The tomboy hummed in thought for a minute since her fellow Ravenet didn't sound like she was lying and the blonde wasn't trying to get all touchy-feely with her best friend, so she decided to take their word for it. "Right. Sorry about that. My name's Tatsuki Arasawa, nice to meet you guys." She spoke as she gave a proper introduction. "I am Orihime Inoue, thank you so much for your help. You're very kind." The orange-haired girl spoke as she smiled sweetly. The whiskered teen glanced over her form, more specifically her injuries. The poor girl looked like she had been through the ringer. Almost as if a wild animal had tried to maul her. There was also a funny-looking bruise on her arm that was unusually large, but seemed almost like some sort of hand had grabbed her way too hard. "Think nothing of it. Pardon my asking, but how'd you get hurt?" Naruto asked with a raised eyebrow as he wondered what could have caused such injuries. "This thing. Orihime almost got injured when she was almost run over, and then when we were having dinner together in her apartment something attacked us." Tatsuki explained as she rubbed the back of her head, her explanation making her best friend pale a bit in recollection. "Attacked you? What was it? Did you see?" Rukia asked, her curiosity piqued upon hearing this, making her wonder if a hollow was responsible for this. No. Didn't see a thing. There was this force, a presence of some kind. It choked me and almost broke my arm. Orihime got the worst of it though. She was barely alive when I came to. We got to the hospital just in time. Doctors said if I had woken up any later, she might not have made it." Tatsuki explained and pulled her collar and scarf down, revealing a large bruise that encircled her neck. "That sounds awful. I'm glad you both made it." The whiskered teen spoke sympathetically, though inwardly his mind was following along the same lines as his roommate, concluding that a hollow must be responsible for attacking these girls, much like the one that attacked him at his own apartment and almost killed Rukia. Tatsuki-chan thought it would be best to move somewhere new for my safety and recovery. So here we are. Orihime chimed in, deeply appreciating her friend's support. "I see. Well, if you two ever need anything or just want someone to talk to, you can always come to me. Don't worry either, I think that whatever attacked you won't be a problem for much longer." The whiskered teen spoke, silently promising to put down the hollow that attacked these girls if it ever came to them again. He glanced back at his roommate, who gave him a subtle nod and mouthed talk later to him, prompting him to give a small wink of acknowledgement. "Forgot to ask, but do you two know which class you're going to? Hate to drop you off at the wrong place." The Jinchuriki asked since he was now responsible for making sure the newcomers got to their proper classroom. Both Orihime and Tatsuki sweat dropped with the latter answering kinda forgot which one it was, but our teacher is supposed to be a fella named Rukia. An animated gunshot rang out in the background as both the whiskered blonde and Shinigami sweat dropped as well. Seriously? What were the odds of that? Was Iruka's class literally the only one in the school, or were the others already too full up to accept new students? Regardless, it made things way more convenient. He briefly wondered if he should warn them both about Iruka and some of his classmates, or should he just let them see for themselves and let them form their own opinions. He didn't have to deliberate much further as Rukia made the decision for him and piped up, "It would seem that we're in the same class. Word of advice. Be careful around the teachers and some of the students. As a new student, I quickly learned they are prone to biased and bigoted behavior." Both the martial artist and bubbly air had exchanged looks. If the purple-eyed girl was warning them, then no doubt it was for good reason. They said nothing and simply accepted her words, being sure to take this information to heart. Once they arrived directly in front of the classroom door, the whiskered teen asked, "Will you two be okay from here? There's something I gotta discuss with Rukia privately." The two girls smiled and nodded as the blonde set Orihim down, while her tomboyish friend returned the orange tea's crutches to her and opened the door for her. "Thanks for all the help. You're a pretty swell guy. Someone I know could stand to take a few lessons in manners from you." Totsuki spoke gratefully, her words making a certain orange-haired boy sneeze quite loudly. "Thanks again." Orihim spoke, briefly waving goodbye before making her way into the classroom with the assistance of her crutches and best friend. Once they were inside and the door was shut, both the Jinchuriki and Shinigami exchanged nods as they made their way further down the hall and went up a flight of stairs, finding a quiet corner to speak privately. Rukia passed the blonde Zanpakuto back to him as she spoke, "I trust you came to the same idea as me? That those girls were attacked by a hollow?" She questioned him directly, causing the blonde to sigh while scratching his cheek with a lone finger. "Yup. I was thinking the same thing. There was this huge bruise on Orihim's arm. Kind of looked like a hand. I'm a tad confused though, if they were really attacked by a hollow, why didn't it kill and eat them?" The whiskered teen asked as he leaned against the stair railing. "A good question. Hollows are pluses that became corrupt, being left stranded in the world of the living and not passing on to soul society. Sometimes they embed themselves into the earth due to past regrets or unfinished business, which let them slip through the cracks. Others haunt those that are still alive, often family members that they wish to watch over. Given that Orihim took the worst of those injuries, it would not surprise me if a late family member of hers became a hollow and attempted to attack her, as it is quite often that hollows will attack their own family members first. Perhaps this one had a moment of clarity and ceased its assault at the last second, hence why the girls are still alive. Should it come again, they may not survive. In which case, we must intercept this hollow and defeat it," she explained, making the whiskered teen hum in thought as he stared down the various flights of stairs, almost as if gazing into an abyss. "Right, that means I'll have to take it out. No problem," he stated with confidence, a small part of him hoping to try out his new Zanpakuto against a new foe and more importantly, protect both Totsuki and Orihim who seemed like good people. "Oh? Take what out? You two planning something? If so, is it of a bloody or salacious nature?" asked a female voice that the whiskered teen immediately recognized as he sighed. Rukia looked up and saw a blonde girl with blue eyes staring down at them from above on the steps who was resting her chin on an open palm with an impish smirk. "There's no gossip for you here. Go away." The Uzumaki spoke in a slightly gruff tone, his words making his fellow blonde give a mock-hurt expression as she gave a set of adorable puppy dog eyes. "Oh? Not even for me? You know I'll reward you well for any juicy deets." Naruto? Who is this?" The raven-haired Shinigami asked. She knew this girl was a part of their class, but she couldn't put a name to a face. Oh, yeah. Rukia, meet Ino Yamanaka. The self-proclaimed queen of gossip in Konoha and heiress to the Yamanaka clan. Despite giving herself that title, no one has ever disputed her claim, and usually her information and gossip is shockingly accurate. He explained, making his roommate raise an eyebrow before glancing back up at the blonde girl, who had a slightly arrogant look on her face. Ding, ding. Got it in one. Don't you know? Information is a pretty hot and valuable commodity, and my clan is pretty deeply embedded in the torture and interrogation department. Information is pretty much our bread and butter. Plus, my part-time job working at the flower shop gives me a chance to chew the rag with a lot of different people. Ino explained in a somewhat haughty manner, feeling quite prideful of her gossip and information gathering. Let me make this clear, mine and Rukia's business isn't up for sale or meant for gossip. The Jinchuriki stated, earning a pouting expression from the heiress as she lazily twirled a lock of hair from her signature ponytail. No? Too bad. Still, that's okay. You've already provided me tons of gossip without even realizing it. You beating Sasuke, then Iruka, word spreading around the village, not that I can claim sole responsibility for spreading the word around. Some people are wondering when a rematch between you and Sasuke is going to take place to settle things. As a matter of fact, I just recently overheard him talking to both Rukia and Mizuki about setting up a special match. No holds barred, jutsu and weapons allowed, that sort of thing. Not sure when it's gonna happen though. Ino explained with a giggle. So that's his game, Naruto muttered, realizing that the Uchiha intended to challenge him, only this time he was tipping the odds in his favor due to the so-called elite's proficiency with his fire-style jutsu, whereas the Uzumaki himself couldn't use any ninjutsu beyond the substitution and transformation, the latter of which would be basically useless in battle against Sasuke. He scratched his chin with a sigh, knowing he was at a disadvantage. While he did have his Zanpakuto, he hadn't even yet gotten a chance to train with it or understand what other secrets it held. At the very least, he had been warned ahead of time. I don't get it. Aren't you one of Sasuke's fangirls? Why warn me? He questioned the heiress, making her giggle while giving a dismissive wave and lazy expression. I was, yeah. Unfortunately, the whole breedy bad boy that treats everyone like crap shtick gets old pretty quickly. I don't particularly need his money, and I'm already a member of a pretty prestigious clan, so I don't need anything from him. I guess if I have a reason for telling you, then call it a sense of fair play and for the sake of entertainment. She explained in a slightly conceited tone. Okay then. Thanks for the warning then Ino. He responded gratefully, glad to see that she wasn't a mindless and rabid Uchiha fangirl like so many others. Even if her intentions were entirely selfish, she still had the decency to give him a warning. She gave a flirty wink and then spoke in a teasing voice. If you'd like to thank me, then share some deliciously sweet gossip. Tell me, are you two an item? You two got quite friendly very quickly, one would have to be a total moron not to see it. She questioned them with a Cheshire-like grin and a small blush to her face. Both the whiskered boy and Shinigami shook their heads with the former answering in a blunt tone, we're just friends. That's it. Nothing is going on between us. At his words, Ino's expression became stoic in nature as she stared at them, looking for any signs of lies or deceit, as this wasn't the answer she was hoping for. Sadly for her, they were telling the truth. Oh pooh. No secret trysts. No sudden romance. Boring. Ah well, I'm willing to bet good cash that you two can and will end up together. Ta-ta for now. I hope you continue making things interesting, Naruto. I always did enjoy a good underdog story. The blonde heiress spoke before pressing two fingers to her lips and giving a goodbye kiss with a loud mwah before disappearing, likely heading back to their classroom. Rukia narrowed her eyes a bit. Once she was certain that the heiress was out of earshot, she spoke. Ino Yamanaka. She's different from many of the other students. She's really the heiress to her clan. The Jinchuriki cleared his throat and answered yep. That she is. There's a number of heirs and heiresses representing their clans in our class. Each clan has a particular function within the village, with many of their members serving in the shinobi corps and their respective leaders, the clan heads, being part of Konoha's government, the shinobi council to give voice to the concerns of their clans directly to the Hokage during meetings. The Yamanaka clan is known to have a special technique that lets them read the minds of others and can even transfer their consciousness into other bodies to control them. I even hear that they can scan the memories of the dead, provided the brain isn't damaged or rotten. The Yamanakas also have a number of flower shops throughout the village too. Ino's always been something of a spoiled princess type since her dad dotes on her a lot. Honestly, I've never interacted with her that much, but she never treated me badly. I thought your Hokage was in charge of the village. Rukia pointed out, feeling slightly confused by the mentioning of a council. Why should there be a council if the Hokage wasn't meant to be the top authority? He is, but there's more to it than that. Naturally, all shinobi are subordinate to the Hokage, who is the ruling authority, but he's not the sole political figure. You have the Shinobi Council as already explained, who are composed of all the clan heads to represent their respective clans, and in some cases the non-affiliated shinobi. Next you have the Civilian Council with its members being elected by the civilian populace to represent them, as well with the Civilian Council handling things like trade, commerce and certain levels of infrastructure. They all can voice their concerns and opinions to the Hokage, but ultimately it is the Hokage herself that gets the final say. I once heard that if a Hokage abuses their power, then the councils can vote to depose the incumbent Hokage, but the vote has to be unanimous. Thus far, this countermeasure has never actually been implemented. Also, I should mention that the land we live on technically belongs to the daimyo, whose authority supersedes even the Hokages, but the daimyos very rarely, if ever, get involved in shinobi business. At the end of his explanation, his sweat dropped as he saw his roommate nodding along while scribbling down notes. Gotta say, I think you might be a better teacher than Rukia and Mizuki. Rukia commented as she finished jotting down her notes, her words making the whiskered teen sweat drop a bit since that wasn't exactly a difficult feat. Whatever you say. Let's go, we've wasted enough time here. We should grab some seats while we still can before all the good ones are taken. He advised, with the Ravenet silently agreeing as they made their way to their classroom. When they arrived at their class, they saw both Tatsuki and Orihime had taken their seats in the front row, no doubt for the orange tea's convenience due to her injuries. Ino was currently sitting in the middle row, a strange little smile on her face, as she winked at both her fellow blonde and the female Shinigami. They showed no reaction as the two went to the back of the class and sat together with a whiskered teen leaning back in his seat with a sigh. They had arrived just in time as more and more students began to file in, some came alone, most came in pairs or large groups. Naruto took the time to point out the other clan heirs, telling his friend about them and their respective clans. He started with Kiba Inuzuka and his canine partner Akamaru, warning her that the dog boy was infamously known as a horn dog and that his clan was responsible for many veterinary clinics, kennels, and animal rescue services. Many were taijutsu users and trackers that use coordinated techniques with their respective canines. Next up was Choji Akamichi, who almost always had a bag of potato chips handy. His clan owned a number of restaurants in the village and were known to have body expansion techniques that allowed them to enlarge parts of their body or even become full-size giants. A lot of Akamichis take jobs as bodyguards, if he remembered correctly. Then came Choji's best friend Shikamaru Nara. True to the Nara clan's reputation and stereotype, Shikamaru was as lazy as they came but was in reality a genius. His clan members were often tacticians who used their shadow manipulation jutsu to trip up or immobilize the enemy, which often put them in support roles. Next was Shino Aburam, who the Jinchuriki admitted was perhaps the one he knew the least about. Shino was as stoic and mysterious as they came, but deep down, the whiskered teen knew that the Aburam heir wasn't a pushover and not one to be trifled with. The Aburam clan were also known as trackers that used their insects to scout enemy positions and in some cases, their insects to poison and debilitate the enemy. He skipped over Sasuke and Ino since Rukia was already aware of them. So he then pointed out Hinata Hyuga, a timid wallflower type of girl that seemed to be having difficulty breaking out of her shell, perhaps due to mounting pressure within her clan, though he wasn't entirely sure about that, perhaps it also had to do with a certain kidnapping incident when she was a little girl. He then explained that the Hyuga clan was the current military police force within Konoha due to their Byakugan that made it easy to locate any fleeing criminals and their gentle fist techniques that could easily immobilize or even kill. The Ravenet thanked him for the information as she furiously scribbled down notes that she wouldn't forget while also doodling rabbit-like figures that were meant to represent the various heirs. He honestly couldn't tell them apart. How could Rukia differentiate between the doodles? He decided not to ask about it and sighed as he kicked his feet up. It would seem that he would be teaching Rukia about the village and she would be teaching him about being a Shinigami. A win-win for them both. Not to mention it'll be easier for her to blend in by at least knowing the basics of the village. After a little more time passed, all the students had gathered and taken their seats. Strangely, the last student to arrive was none other than Sasuke himself, who was almost immediately followed by the Chunin teachers. Most likely hashing out the details of the rematch between himself and the Uchiha. He frowned as he noticed the elite giving him a dirty expression before taking his seat. Once all the students were in their places, Haruka made an announcement of 2 additional transfer students, that being Orihime and Tatsuki. Unsurprisingly, he noticed that the Uchiha fangirls were bristling and already whispering amongst themselves. He couldn't hear what exactly they were saying, but he could already guess that it involved the new girls and their precious Sasuke-kun. He read the lips of a certain Pinket and caught the word huge boobs, which undoubtedly referred to Orihime's large chest. Most likely the aforementioned Pinket had certain feelings of inadequacy, given her distinct lack of a chest. He yawned as he felt himself growing sleepy once again as Haruka began the morning lecture, with Rukia also having difficulty staying awake as well, the two of them dozing off, which earned them strange looks from some of the class, while the scarred Chunin continued on, not even bothering to wake them up with his usual method of throwing chalk. If they wanted to ignore and skip classes then let them, it would only hurt them in the long run. Both Tatsuki and Orihime simply chuckled at the duo and continued to listen to the lecture, hoping to enjoy the piece so that they may recover from their injuries. Then Chapter 3. Chapter 4. Training begins. Both Orihime and Tatsuki yawned sleepily as they listened to the history lecture about Konoha's founding or at least tried to. The former was having exceptional difficulty keeping her eyes open as she seemed ready to doze off at any time with the tomboy martial artist being almost directly behind her. Kami, the teacher's droning would be enough to put anyone to sleep and this was their first day. They shook their heads rapidly to force themselves awake and then looked over their shoulders and saw the forms of both Rukia and Naruto who were fast asleep, making them sweat drop a bit. The orange tea giggled a bit upon noticing that the Ravenet was resting her head against the whiskered teen's shoulder, which made for a cute sight. Despite Rukia's statement about them not being a couple, it certainly seemed that they were rather close. The sight made Tatsuki chuckle as she gave a tiny smirk. That Naruto was a lucky guy and any girl would be lucky to have him as a boyfriend given his kindness and respect towards the fairer sex. They both noticed that the duo were getting some weird looks from some of the other students, with the tomboy wondering if it was because the blonde had a cute girl hanging off his arm. The two friends could also hear some girls behind them whispering something about a boy called Sasu-kun, but paid it no mind. They just wanted to enjoy some peace, quiet and heal from their injuries. Time slowly passed as the lecture continued. Both the tomboy and bubbly airhead were on the verge of completely falling asleep until the bell started ringing loudly, which snapped them back to attention. If they remembered the class itinerary correctly, then after the morning lecture would come class spars. Most fortunately for them, especially Orihime, they would be exempt from spars until they recovered from their injuries, since the teachers had been made aware of their current status. Now that Tatsuki thought about it, even if Orihime was at 100%, she doubted that she would be able to bring herself to fight anyone, given the orange tea was a gentle soul. On the other hand, it would be good for her to at least know some basic self-defense. As the students began to file out, the tomboy helped her friend with her crutches, since her best friend was still adjusting to them. Thankfully, she was starting to get the hang of them and was able to keep up with the other students. As they made their way out of the classroom, they noticed that both Naruto and Rukia were trailing along the back and then broke off from everyone else, making the two friends realize that the blonde and raven-haired girl were skipping class. Why was that? Did they have a reason for it? It was a tad strange, but they chose not to question it and assumed that it was for a good reason, especially since the teachers who had also taken notice of their departure didn't even bother trying to stop them from leaving. Meanwhile, with Naruto and Rukia. That was way easier than I thought. I'm surprised that the teachers didn't even make an effort to hinder us. The female Shinigami muttered as she and her roommate slipped out of the academy to head towards the third training ground with her hands clasped behind her back. Ah. Most likely Ruka thinks by letting us play hooky that we will only be weakening ourselves. What he has failed to take into account or think about is that we will be training. I'm past caring about what he thinks. The blonde stated with a sigh as he rubbed his neck, very much eager to actually learn something and get some training in and not waste away in a useless classroom. Do you think Orihime and Tatsuki will be okay without us? He questioned, feeling concerned that the hollow stalking the orange tea may strike while they are training. He would hate for something to happen to them and they weren't able to keep them safe. I am strongly confident that they'll be alright for the time being. There's safety in numbers for a reason after all. While school is still going and they're within the safety of the herd, we should get some training done post-haste. If you aren't prepared, you will not be able to protect them from harm. While it is true you were able to drive off in a judges, you shouldn't get overconfident. She spoke in a warning tone, her words making the whiskered teen sigh. I know. I definitely don't want to get a big head like Sasuke. I just can't help but worry. Those girls seemed like nice people. He responded while scratching the back of his head, his reply making the female Shinigami smile warmly. She very much doubted that the whiskered blonde would ever end up anything like the Uchiha. The elite was cold, rude, spiteful, there was nothing in his heart but a lust for power and desire for revenge. Naruto was kind-hearted and while he craved power, he wanted it to protect himself and others from peril. While he could be kind of rude, it was mainly directed at others who treated him poorly. They continued on in silence until reaching their destination. Once they arrived, the blonde drew his zanpakuto, the blade gleaming in the light as he took a readied stance. He gripped the hilt tight with both of his hands, prompting Rukia to shake her head and explain, don't hold on too tightly. Use only the amount of strength necessary to hold onto your sword. It is a blade, a weapon of finesse, not a club that to bludgeon your enemies with. He nodded and loosened his grip a little, giving a quick apology since he didn't have any training with blades. She showed him a more proper form and had him spread his feet apart a bit wider for proper balance and stability. Once he had gotten the stance down, she began drilling him in several katas to become used to swinging his sword. A part of her wished that she had her powers back so that she could spar with him, but for now she would have to instruct him and provide the building blocks that would form the foundation he needed. At first his swings were clumsy, but he steadily got the hang of it as he proceeded to perform his katas with increasing efficiency. As he performed the exercises she had assigned for him, he asked Rukia, what's the best way to fight a hollow? There's specific tactic or technique I need to know about. Glad you asked. A hollow's weak point is their mask. If you can come up from behind them and slice clean through their mask, you should be able to defeat them easily. The Ravenet explained with a grin, pleased to see her new student and partner catching on rather quickly. So in other words, a sneak attack or assassination to mitigate collateral damage and minimize the risks of innocent people getting hurt. Sounds like that's right up my alley. I may not look it, but I'm pretty agile. He responded with a small chuckle since he had successfully run circles around many chunin whenever he performed a pranking spree. Those days were done now though, he no longer had any interest in petty pranks or jokes for some meager attention, he had far greater aspirations in sight now. She was pleased to see him readily accept her advice instead of acting like a blockhead with some naive code about fighting fair or something stupid like that. The whiskered teen continued his katas for a little while longer, now feeling more confident and comfortable with swinging his blade. The length of it gave him considerable reach, but if he had to fight in a cramped space, then it would be difficult to properly use his zanpakuto. He would have to be careful of this should he have to fight somewhere with limited room. Okay. I think I have a better handle on this now. Let's see if I can use that technique that I used on that dragon hollow. He muttered to himself as he held the blade in both hands, aiming towards a nearby tree as he focused his energy into his adachi. The blade crackled and hummed with power as blue-black flames erupted along the length of his weapon. Rukia cringed slightly in discomfort as she could feel power radiating off of the zanpakuto. The amount of spiritual pressure was beginning to weigh her down as it forced her to one knee, making her marvel at the blonde's raw strength. She hadn't seen it before due to nearly dying at that time, but this was the technique he used to beat the dragon hollow. Incredible. Am you sorry? Naruto shouted as he swung his blade in a wide arc, unleashing the built-up energy as it cut clean through the air, a wave of black energy with a blue outline sailing through the air and cut down a swath of some 20 or so trees that all fell to the ground with a thunderous crash. She stared in awe at the destruction that was left behind and how easily his attack sliced down all of those trees, then the whiskered teen face-palmed as he cried out, "Crap. I messed up. That was a mess up." Rukia shouted in disbelief while comically slapping the air. If that was supposed to be a mess up, then what would the Uzumaki call a success? He scratched his cheek with a lone finger as he explained, "I was aiming for only one tree and I tried using a small amount of power. Even then, it seems I used too much. I wonder if using the same amount of power but using only one hand would make a difference." He wondered the last part aloud as he held his zanpakuto aloft with one hand while reaching out with the other, as if to use his free and empty hand to assist in his aim. "Okay. Let's try this again. Kamusari." The Jinchuriki called out as he focused his power into the adachi yet again and gave a mighty swing. Once again a wave of energy sliced through the open air until it hit its mark and felled a singular tree farther in the back that the first attack failed to reach. Interesting, if I use two hands the attack seems to be stronger and has a wide area of effect, good for taking down multiple foes. If I use one hand, I can aim and focus it and make it reach farther away. He mused aloud with a grin as he gained a better understanding of what his zanpakuto was capable of. What's going on here? That doesn't appear to be a shikai. He hasn't learned his zanpakuto's name yet. Clearly I missed something here. There's way more to him and his sword than meets the eye. Naruto, just how strong can you become? The raven-haired girl thought to herself as she crossed her arms, admiring the blonde's strength while also wondering what the true nature of his sword was. Quite clearly, it wasn't an ordinary zanpakuto. Then again, Naruto wasn't a typical Shinigami either. Now that she thought about it, never in the history of Soul Society did someone have the power of a Shinigami and a Jinchuriki. This was both unusual and contradictory. In Soul Society, a spirit must have sufficient spiritual power to become a Shinigami, and if she understood things correctly, a Biju needed a living host to keep them in check and control their strength. She could only wonder how things would continue to develop from here. Regardless, she was strongly certain that her new partner had plenty of latent power and potential, just waiting to be nurtured. She just knew it. Not bad. Not bad at all. Shouted a female voice, gaining the attention of both Naruto and Rukia as they saw a woman wearing a trench coat with distinctive purple hair and a pineapple-style ponytail who was munching on some dango. Pretty neat technique there, but the enemy isn't gonna stand around and let you slice them to ribbons. The purple-haired woman spoke with a chuckle as the whiskered teen sheathed his blade. I wouldn't expect them to. Still, I need to work on my aim so that I can nail a moving target. The Jinchuriki replied bluntly, all the while wondering why it was that people kept on interrupting him and Rukia whenever they were talking or trying to get things done. Heh. True enough. Always gotta start somewhere. Sorry for dropping in on ya. I was passing by and saw that technique of yours. Pretty awesome stuff. I'm the sexy, single, dangerous snake mistress and connoisseur of dango, Anko Mitarashi. A member of the torture and interrogation department. The woman introduced herself in a friendly tone. I'm Naruto. This is Rukia. The Jinchuriki spoke as he introduced himself and his friend. He didn't sense any hostility from the dango lover, nor any intent to interrupt them. She was just genuinely curious and wanted to see what all the commotion was about. So you're the kid that has that Sasuke brat whining over his loss. Cool beans. I'm glad that there's someone around that won't enable the little shit. Heh, gotta say, I think it's smarter to skip all those useless history lectures at the academy and focus on more practical training. Kudos. Anko stated as she shoved another dango in her mouth and chewed noisily before swallowing. No love for Sasuke, eh? Rukia questioned since she hadn't yet met very many who didn't suck up to the Uchiha. No love for him or Uchiha's in general. While there were a few good eggs here and there, most of them were pretty rotten. They weren't very popular amongst the shinobi corps. I mean, think about how it feels to train on a technique for hours or days on end to master a technique, and then those Uchiha pricks just flash their Sharingan and get it down pat in just a few seconds. The snake mistress replied disdainfully. First-hand experience. Also, I know of only one snake summoner, and he went rogue some years back. The whiskered teen pointed out, his words reminding Rukia that there were some shinobi in the mortal realm that utilized contracts to summon animal familiars to help them fight. Nah, not me personally, but a lot of friends of mine had that problem. Also, for clarification, I was Orochimaru's apprentice till he went rogue. Not exactly a badge of honor that I'm proud of. Won't stop me from finally putting him in the ground though. The dangle lover stated, her tone full of hate as she thought about slitting her former teacher's throat or slowly strangling him to death should he ever get the chance. The name instantly struck a chord in Rukia's memory. Even in Soul Society, Orochimaru was an infamous figure that had been blacklisted by the Gate 13 for perverting the boundaries of life and death. The raven-haired Shinigami didn't have long to contemplate this as the snake mistress continued anyways, sorry for crashing in on your training. Keep up the good work. Bye-bye. The purple-haired woman then gave a friendly wave and began to depart. The whiskered teen then got an idea and asked, hold up a second, would you mind teaching me some ninjutsu? At his question, the dangle lover turned back around to face him with a raised eyebrow, a smirk forming on her face as she licked her lips in an almost predatory manner, her eyes holding a sharp edge to them as she seemed to be sizing him up. Oh? You want to learn some ninjutsu from me? Why is that? I'm not exactly the sensei type. I'm not interested in training snot-nosed brats. The purple-haired woman spoke in a challenging tone. The academy has nothing to offer me, and I'm training to be prepared for when I have to fight strong enemies. You suffered a lot because of your former association with Orochimaru, right? Well, if you train me, I promise you, as your student, I'll take him down. He'll pay for all the lives he has ruined and pain he has inflicted. The whiskered teen promised with a huge grin. The snake mistress's face remained stoic and unreadable before she broke out into a laugh and said, are you serious? You think you're gonna be some kind of champion of justice or something and defeat Orochimaru? The bastard is as slippery as they come, and you think you're gonna be the one to finally end him? Still, I like the cut of your jib. If you can follow through on that, it would be deliciously sweet to have someone I trained to take him down on my behalf. Anko then adopted a thinking pose as she quietly muttered to herself Technically speaking, I shouldn't be teaching an academy student any jutsu, but it's not like those pansy-ass teachers are gonna do him any good either Org. Forget it. I'm sold. I'll train you provided you can pass a little test of mine. She spoke at the end with a fiendish grin. The snake user then performed several hand signs and summoned a set of 4 snakes in front of the whiskered teen. She then knelt down and whispered instructions to them, making them all seemingly bow their heads in obedience before turning to the Jinchuriki. Here's my test. You've got 4 snakes in front of you. 3 of them are venomous, 1 of them is not. If you pick the non-venomous one, then you pass. If you pick wrong, then they'll bite you, and let me warn you ahead of time that their venom is extremely potent and fatal. Choose carefully. Anko warned him in a grave tone and then crossed her arms beneath her bust, patiently awaiting his choice. The whiskered teen set aside his zanpakuto and observed the snakes, all 4 of them seeming poised to strike, and he could almost swear that the 4 of them were all smiling and daring him to choose them. Don't do it. It isn't worth it. Rukia protested, not wishing to see her friend get poisoned because of some crazy lady's twisted test. The blonde didn't respond as he continued to observe the snakes, trying to figure out how to tell them apart. Unfortunately, he knew almost nothing about serpents, much less distinguish the venomous from the non-venomous. He then chuckled a bit and spoke kind of in a tight spot here. Not gonna lie. Still, at least you were nice enough to give me a chance. A slim one, but still a chance. That's more than a lot of people have done for me. He then narrowed his eyes and let out a loud roar and then snatched up all 4 snakes with 2 in each hand. Dead silence filled the area, the only noise being the howling wind as Anko, Rukia, and the 4 serpents could only stare at the whiskered teen with their mouths agape. The first one to break out of their stupor was none other than the snake mistress herself. Ahahaha. Ahahaha. I don't believe it. I just don't believe it. I never would have expected you to grab all 4 of them. Holy shit. You got guts, brat. You have got some serious guts. Scratch that. You must have balls of freaking tungsten. How the fuck do you walk around with such big and heavy balls between your legs? Ahahaha. Anko shouted in between fits of laughter as she slapped at her knees. The purple-eyed Shinigami could only stare wide-eyed at this scene. Did that mean he had passed the test then? Once the snake mistress ceased her laughter, she gained a shit-eating grin and spoke seriously though, you got some big balls on you. Honestly, they wouldn't have bitten you even if you picked wrong. I'm not about to have the death of a nice kid like you on my conscience. I just wanted to see if you would make a choice or if you'd wuss out like a coward. You did not disappoint." The Jinchuriki beamed brightly as he set the snakes down gently. They all seemed to chuckle a bit before their mistress dismissed them, allowing them to disappear in puffs of smoke. "You're something special, aren't you? I like you. Glad to see you're not all talk," the snake mistress stated while pulling the blonde into a one-armed hug, which resulted in his face getting pushed up against her bust, which made him blush deeply, the smell of sweat, sugar, and dango lingering heavily on her skin. She then released him and spoke in a jovial tone. "I'll be catching you later, Naruto-kun. I got some stuff I need to take care of today at the tea department. I'll swing by tomorrow if you're still training here to teach you some jutsu. Bye-bye now." The snake user giggled and gave a two-fingered salute before vanishing in a blur of motion, leaving the two roommates alone. Well, she was definitely unique. Naruto spoke with a quick chuckle before turning towards the Shinigami, who was currently white as a sheet and clutching at her chest as she wheezed out, "Naruto, you bastard, I think my heart almost dropped into my pelvis." The Ravenette then seemed to quickly recover and smashed her foot against his face as she screeched out, "You asshole. You scared the crap out of me. Do you have any idea how worried I was?" The force of her kick was enough to send the blonde flying away until he impacted hard against the ground with such force that a small crater formed beneath him. Wow. He didn't think that there was anyone capable of screeching loud enough to rival a certain Pinket, though in this instance, he kind of deserved getting pummeled by Rukia. "Ouch," he muttered as he got up from the ground and rubbed his neck, admiring Rukia's powerful kick for a brief moment before speaking in an apologetic tone. "I'm sorry about that, Rukia. I didn't mean to scare you. I'll be more mindful next time," he promised her with a reassuring smile. She puffed her cheeks and stamped her foot while crossing her arms as she yelled, "You better. I won't forgive you if you ever do anything stupid like that again. Kami, you're such a handful," she growled out at the end while shaking her head. He simply smiled, feeling happy that she was concerned for him and that everything turned out okay. He then glanced at the afternoon sun, noting that it was slowly sinking down into the horizon. "I think right about now, classes at the academy will be coming to an end. Might be a good idea to conduct a stakeout and keep an eye on Orihime and Tatsuki and wait for that hollow to show up. If we hurry, we should be able to catch them leaving the school and follow them to their home." "Good idea. If you carry me on your back, we'll be able to move faster," she stated and proceeded to hop on the Jinchuriki's back, wrapping her arms around his neck to hold on, being careful not to squeeze too tightly to avoid cutting off his air. "I don't mind carrying you, but won't you be more comfy in a bridal carry?" the whiskered teen questioned while scratching his cheek, his words making the Ravenette chuckle a bit as once again he showed off his kind and caring side. "Maybe, but by clinging to your back your arms will be free in case of an attack. Do not underestimate hollows for any reason. Especially their viciousness," she warned him, since hollows were creatures that were driven by a maddening hunger. "Whatever you say. Hold tight." The blonde spoke and then dashed off across the village, trying to move quickly, but not so much that it overwhelmed his passenger as he ran through the village and easily leapt across the rooftops, a part of him deeply enjoying the enhancements to his already impressive agility. It wasn't very long until they arrived at a rooftop that was overlooking the front entrance to the academy grounds. With the many students leaving and heading home for the day, some of them being escorted by their parents, while others were walking by themselves or in small groups. Amidst the crowd, Orihime's distinctive orange hair quickly stuck out like a sore thumb as she and her tomboyish friend walked to their own place of residence. He frowned at seeing Orihime trying to walk with the assistance of her crutches, not feeling comfortable with just hanging back and watching from a distance. "Hey Rukia. Let's help them out again. The sooner they get home, the better." He spoke in a concerned voice, his words making his new friend smile warmly since the whiskered teen was such a kind-hearted soul. She then sighed and schooled her features and then spoke, "I understand wanting to offer assistance to others, but you shouldn't coddle her. She needs to recover under her own power and not be completely dependent on others." Her friend Tatsuki is there to offer her support and ensure she doesn't hurt herself, but still allowing Orihime some independence. "Besides, we don't wish to alert the hollow to our presence and lose the element of surprise. The sooner we defeat it, the safer they'll be." The whiskered blonde deflated a bit as he silently accepted her point. He didn't think about it that way, and Rukia was right. There were some things that the orange tea needed to handle on her own, and once the hollow was dealt with then she would be able to heal without fear of being attacked again. They followed the two best friends, staying close enough that they could quickly jump in if they were attacked, but staying far enough back that they wouldn't be disturbed by their presence. As they shadowed the two girls, they overheard Tatsuki asking, "Hey Orihime. Did you hear any weird stuff about Naruto and Rukia?" This gained the attention of both the Shinigami and Jinchuriki as they heard the bubbly and imaginative girl reply, "Weird stuff? What do you mean, Tatsuki-chan? I was too busy thinking and worrying about what I'm gonna do if I have to fight someone. Some of those girls were giving me mean looks when I said that Sasuke guy had a nasty look about him. Huh. It would seem that the airhead was wise enough to not be taken in by the Uchiha's handsome exterior. That was good to know, a lot of potentially nice girls had allowed themselves to be warped by their passion and obsession for Sasuke. Yeah, he did, didn't he? I was listening to some of the other students and they were saying some pretty mean things about them, mostly Naruto. About how he was nothing but a troublemaker, a prankster, how he has a bad attitude and disrespected the teachers. Kinda weird since he was nice enough to help us out before. Oh. I think I heard that too. I don't know why, but a lot of them gave me bad vibes, especially the teachers. Remember what Rukia said earlier? About them being biased and bigoted? Orihime asked as she continued limping forward with the assistance of her crutches. Sounds like there's a lot of drama going around. Should we ask Naruto about it? Feels weird that a nice guy like him is being talked about in such a bad way. The tomboy spoke while cleaning out her ear with her pinky finger as she and her best friend were both confused at how kindly and helpful the blonde had been to them versus all the trash talk that was spoken about him. There were even some that were calling him a full-on delinquent. Something just wasn't adding up here. It was of no surprise to the Uzumaki and Shinigami that the two girls were confused by his reputation versus how he behaved towards them. At least they were giving him the benefit of the doubt instead of just going along with what they heard secondhand from everyone else. They continued to follow the female duo quietly as the orange tea began stating that she would cook dinner and then listed off numerous bizarre combinations that made their stomachs cramp up. Even Totsuki seemed to pale at the thought of having to eat whatever unholy abomination that her best friend would conjure up in the kitchen and then advised that perhaps they should just eat some beef bowls for the night. Sheesh. I know that cooking can be an experimental art but there's gotta be certain limitations. Naruto muttered as his face turned a little green from Orihime's weird tastes. Please move gently. I don't feel good. Rukia whimpered from his back as her face seemed to lose color as her upset tummy made her feel sick. They both chanted together in unison think about beef bowls to try and get their minds off of the unnatural food combos Orihime described, which seemed to work as they felt a bit less nauseous now. After a while longer of following the two girls, they arrived at an aging dojo with the orange tea asking, is it really okay for us to stay here? Your relatives were pretty generous to leave this whole place to us. Yeah, it's fine. They were looking for someone to look after it and keep it clean anyway, so we don't gotta worry about the rent or utility bills. It all works out, yeah. Now you wash up and I'll see about getting dinner ready. I'm starving. Totsuki stated as she and her best friend entered inside and locked the door behind them while both Naruto and Rukia observed from a nearby rooftop. Well, looks like this'll be the start of our stakeout. Could be here a while. Naruto mused as his roommate detached herself from him while straightening out her clothes, the whiskered teen sitting down in a cross-legged position. Fortunately, their position gave them a pretty good view of the dojo while also giving them some cover to avoid being seen. Yeah. It's hard to say when that hollow will show up, so we should be ready at any time. While we wait, I'll pick up some snacks and food. Is there anything in particular you want? She asked him as she pulled out her wallet. She was certain that there was a convenience store nearby and a few places that she could nab some quick takeout from. After listening to Totsuki and chanting it, I kinda want a beef bowl now. The blonde answered while scratching his cheek, his response prompting a large sweat drop to form on the ravenette's head since she wanted one as well. Sure. I'll be back as quickly as I can. She promised him before departing to get the promised food and snacks. The whiskered teen sighed as she left and turned his attention towards the dojo, hoping that this would be the only stakeout they would have to do. If they did this over a long period of time, it would seriously mess with their sleep schedule and affect their health and training. He ran his thumb along the hilt of his Zanpakuto and glanced at it, remembering Rukia's explanation about learning the name of his weapon to unlock greater power. He wondered how he was supposed to do that. Was there some kind of trick to it? If this blade was indeed a part of him, there must be a means to communicate. Perhaps if he tried meditating on his sword, then he would be able to discover its name. Well, he supposed that it wouldn't hurt to at least try while he waited. He was certain that if anything happened during his meditation he would be able to hear it. He set his adachi across his lap and breathed deeply as he attempted to commune with it and whispered aloud as if expecting a response, "What is your name?" As if in reply, he felt something within his Zanpakuto stir and pull him in. He guessed that the blade had something to say and allowed it to draw in its consciousness. He felt himself floating, almost fading away as he sank into a bottomless abyss, and then he felt nothing at all. Location. Naruto opened his eyes and glanced around, finding his surroundings to be some sort of ornate hallway that one may find in a museum or mansion. The walls were lined with portraits, but all of them were nothing but blank canvases as far as the eye could see. Why bother putting up blank pictures? Definitely strange. Was this place meant to be some sort of inner world within himself or his Zanpakuto? He pondered over this for a few moments until he heard the sounds of a piano playing classical music, prompting him to follow the source of the noise. He walked along the empty hall for a while until he came upon a mausoleum that was made with black marble. In the center of the room was figure, expertly playing a silver piano. The figure wore a black cloak, its face obscured by shadows, even its arms were concealed by the cloak as the figure played. In perfect honesty, this being didn't appear to have a particular shape beneath its cloak, it was almost like a living mass of shadows were beneath it. Well, at the least, it didn't appear to be a giant foe with 9 tails, which was promising. He approached the shadowy figure and asked it, "Are you my Zanpakuto?" The figure continued to play its music, unbothered as it gestured towards a nearby painting with one of its hands, making the Uzumaki turn and see that the painting depicted a lone woman standing amidst a snow landscape, dressed in a white kimono, her hair silvery and her skin almost pure white. She reminded him of the legends he had heard of Yuki-onas, also known as snow women. Entities that often lived in snow-covered mountains, living in isolation and taking human men as their husbands to procreate, sometimes forcefully depending on the Yuki-ona's demeanor or the legend. Beautiful, but I don't get it. Who are you? Where's my Zanpakuto? He questioned persistently with a raised eyebrow. The cloaked figure seemed to tremble, as if holding in their laughter before pointing towards a nearby door at the east side of the mausoleum. A large sign on the door read, "Do not disturb. Invitation only." The door in question had an ominous feel to it as it radiated certain vibes that he could put appropriate names to. He glanced around and noted that on the west side of the mausoleum there was a door marked Kyuubi. He supposed that it was only natural that the beast was involved somehow, but for the time being, he needed to speak with his Zanpakuto. He took a look at the cloaked being, still playing the piano, seemingly unbothered by his presence as he continued on and approached the door that he assumed contained his Zanpakuto. The doors opened for him by themselves as he passed through them and then slammed shut behind him with a loud clang, which made him jump slightly. He then felt the floor move beneath his feet as it seemed to be guiding him to where he needed to go. He tried to move but found his body standing rigid, the hairs on his neck and arms standing on end. Something was in here with him. At first, there was nothing but pure darkness as far as the eye could see as he stood within an empty void. Then he heard the rattling of chains as he caught the sight of some sort of entity that was suspended in the air as his eyes seemed to adjust, or perhaps the entity simply materialized itself from the very darkness surrounding him. It was a female figure, possibly 10 to 12 feet in height. She was wrapped from head to toe in bandages with her arms kept wrapped tight to her chest, giving her a mummified appearance. She was also bound tightly by heavy chains of silver that held her in the air, with numerous seal tags running along each link of the chains that kept her in place. Naruto Uzumaki finally. A voice spoke to him, but it was not with words. He could hear this being from within his mind. He felt himself stiffen up as the voice almost overwhelmed his mind, making him pant and sweat as he could barely take the strain. This was supposed to be his Zanpakuto. He was supposed to communicate with it. Just hearing those 3 words alone was almost enough to crush his brain and turn it to jelly. The Zanpakuto spirit silently regarded him, a lone pink eye shimmering from beneath the bandages. He could sense disappointment from it. Not ready, the spirit spoke as it tried to communicate with him more softly, and even this faint whisper felt as if thousands upon thousands of needles were stabbing into his brain. He then felt himself being lifted off his feet and sent flying away by an unseen force. The real world. The blonde yelped as he found himself lying on the ground, twitching uncontrollably. His skin felt as if it were on fire, while at the same time, ice water filled his veins. He grit his teeth, trying to breathe to steady himself, but found that it was like his lungs were in a vice, stopping him from sucking in much needed oxygen. He found himself rolling to his side, still twitching and shaking in agony as he saw Rukia return with food and snacks. She then saw him in the state he was in, her face changing from confusion to realization to shock and then to panic as she immediately rushed to his side and cradled his head into her lap. "Naruto. Naruto. Stay with me. What's wrong? What happened? Say something if you can hear me," she cried out in worry. He tried to speak, but no words would come out. He tried to blink his eyes to communicate a message, but it didn't seem that she understood him. Fortunately, after a few moments, his body relaxed and he felt everything gradually return to normal as his ability to breathe properly returned to him. "Holy fucking ass crackers." He blurted out, which seemed enough to make Rukia sigh in relief and hug him gently. "What in the hell happened? I was only gone for about 10 minutes. She growled out angrily, her eyes narrowing as she demanded an explanation. He lifted a hand as he panted and replied, "My Zanpakuto. I tried to communicate with it, didn't go well. It tried to speak to me, but it felt like the sheer force of its being was killing me." He tried to explain as best as he could since he didn't fully understand what had happened. Even the Shinigami herself seemed confused by this. Come again. Zanpakuto spirits can be fickle beings. Sometimes they can refuse to share their full power, but just talking to your spirit did this to you? I never heard of anything like this happening. Scary. Rukia muttered as she glanced at the Adachi, wondering just what kind of spirit may be contained within that could do such harm to its own master. She wasn't trying to hurt me intentionally. I felt it briefly, but she seemed glad that I came to visit, then disappointed when her very presence alone proved too much for me. I guess if I want to be successful, I'm gonna have to train hard to be able to withstand her. The whiskered teen explained after getting his second wind and sat up, picking up his sword and laying it across his lap again. Next time, don't do something so reckless and without my supervision. Some spirits can be tricky, but this is a whole new level. Rukia spoke while crossing her arms, feeling a strong urge to kick the Jinchuriki for his stupidity. He chuckled tiredly and simply agreed with her, since he failed to ask her about what to expect when trying to contact his Zanpakuto. Definitely not something for beginners like him. His stomach then growled, making Rukia's eyebrow twitch as she pinched the bridge of his nose and then shoved a beef bowl and chopsticks in his hands. Kami, you're such a handful, Naruto. I can't keep my eyes off of you for a second. What am I? Your mother, big sister or something? She grumbled angrily while digging into her own food, chewing noisily as she seemed busy eating her feelings instead of enjoying her food. I'm sorry for scaring you again. He apologized to her, making her glare at him briefly before kicking him in the ribs while replying, shut up and eat and don't go making me have another heart attack. He chuckled a bit, glad to know that she really did care for him, and then began to eat his own food. As he did so, he felt the gaze of someone or something watching them as he slowly turned and took notice of a black cat with golden eyes staring at them. He stared back at the feline, noting that there appeared to be intelligence shining within those golden orbs. It didn't look like a typical stray. While it lacked a collar, its fur was too immaculate and the claws appeared neatly trimmed. It seemed to be well fed as well, but it wasn't fat either. Additionally, most strays would run away from people, but this one seemed used to human contact. What's up with you? He questioned rhetorically as he looked at the cat, his words catching Rukia's attention as she followed his gaze and noticed the feline that was observing them. Maybe it's hungry? She wondered aloud with a raised eyebrow, considering throwing the feline a few pieces of meat to give it something to eat. The cat padded up to the whiskered teen and jumped up, planting its front paws to his chest as it sniffed at him. It then seemed to give an approving meow and turned back around and ran out of sight. They both exchanged confused looks for a few moments, finding that to be a little odd. Perhaps the cat was just curious. They shrugged and continued eating in silence. Once they were finished eating, they disposed of the takeout containers in a conveniently closed trash can and observed the dojo for any signs of the hollow. All was quiet as they sat together in silence, watching and waiting for when their aid would be needed. Even more time passed as the moon slowly rose up in the sky as they continued to wait, and then they felt it. A corrupted presence had appeared within the dojo. The hollow was about to make its move and strike. They then heard the sounds of crashing and frightened screams. The whiskered blonde didn't waste any time in springing to action as he drew his adachi and leapt forward, almost flying across the street towards the dojo, and crashed through a window, where he found the form of a hollow that was holding Orihime by the neck, a length of chain connecting her to another Orihime. It took a second for him to realize that one being held by the hollow was likely her soul, and the chain was likely a tether that connected her spirit to her physical body. He figured so long as the chain connected the spirit and body remained unbroken, then it would be possible to revive her. Hey! Let go of her. Naruto shouted as he dashed forward and swung his blade, slicing off one of the hollow's hands at the wrist, forcing it to drop the orange tea's beard. The hollow recoiled and slithered back, growling in pain from the lost hand as it stared at the whiskered teen with fury blazing in its eyes. You? I remember you. You're the one that carried Orihime. The hollow shouted furiously, revealing that it had been following her around in the village for some time now. Yeah. That's right. You were Orihime's family while you were alive, yeah. Just leave her alone and pass on already. Naruto spoke as he gripped his adachi, briefly glancing behind him as Orihime's spirit seemed to be trying to comfort a dazed Totsuki who was bleeding from her head but couldn't hear the orange tea spirit since she couldn't see the souls of others. He frowned since he had lost the element of surprise but hoped that stirring up some memories might give him an opening. As it was now, the hollow seemed coiled to strike and one wrong move could be fatal for the two girls behind the whiskered teen. If he missed his chance, then things could get messy. Yes. Orihime is my little sister. I am her elder brother, Sora. She used to pray for me every day. Then she met that girl, Totsuki, and she began to pray less and less. Then when she went to school, she stopped praying entirely. She was forgetting me. The hollow, now identified as Sora, explained, his body trembling in anger as he stared hungrily at his sibling who listened to this and froze up while the blonde stood between them. He took notice of something, a small shrine of sorts, with a picture of a young man sitting atop the shrine. "Is that you? On the shrine?" The whiskered teen asked as he titled his head and gestured towards the picture, prompting the Holofeed brother to look at the photo, his glowing eyes widening as he saw his human self. "She hasn't forgotten you. You think she would go through the trouble of putting up that shrine if she forgot about you?" The Jinchuriki questioned as he took a careful step forward. "By prayers? Is that why you became like this?" Orihim's soul whispered in the background as she saw what had become of her beloved elder sibling. She then shook her head and shouted, "You're still in there somewhere. I know you. You're not some monster. You took me away from our parents to protect me and practically raised me yourself. I never forgot about you. See? I'm wearing the hairpins you got for me. I wear them every day in your memory." She shouted while pointing out her precious hairpins. This seemed to make her Holofeed brother curl up into a ball as cold realization could be seen in his eyes. "I remember Karakura town. I tried to eat you, but then I saw the hairpins, and I remembered I can't harm my sister, please stop me." Sora roared as he clutched at his head, his cry showing his wish for someone to end his suffering. Taking the chance, Naruto charged forward and cleaved clean through the hollow's mask. The body fell limp as tears seemed to flow down the face as he whispered, "I'm sorry" towards his sister, who could only give a tear-filled smile as she whispered something that she should have said before he died and spoke to his disappearing form goodbye. "Have a nice day." Naruto stood quietly, inspecting his blade as he sheathed it and mumbled, "I did it. I killed him. I killed a hollow." He whispered at the end, unsure of how to feel. Well, it was a hollow deep down, he was still Orihim's brother. A part of him was still human. He then felt a comforting hand on his shoulder, revealing it to be Rukia, who was smiling kindly at him as she then began to explain, "Don't worry. When a hollow is killed by a Shinigami Zanpakuto, they are cleansed of the sins they committed while in hollow form and pass on to Soul Society to enter and continue the cycle of life and death. Perhaps someday they will see each other again." This information seemed to lift the Jinchuriki's presence upon now understanding that slaying hollows didn't mean outright killing them, but more rather purifying them so they could move on. That was nice to know. "Alright, back in you go." Rukia muttered as she helped Orihim's soul back into her physical body. The orange tea seemed ready to burst into a myriad of questions, but was silenced and rendered unconscious as the female Shinigami blasted her with a memory modification gas. She then quickly tended to Tatsuki's injuries, noticing that it was merely a flesh wound and that there was no lasting damage, and then also gave the tomboy a dose of the same gas as her best friend to wipe her memories of this night's events. "Our job here is done. Let's make ourselves scarce and get some sleep while we can," the Ravenet instructed, prompting her partner to quickly give a two-fingered salute as they left the dojo and ran into the night back towards their shared hotel room. The blonde couldn't help but give a cheeky grin as he called out, "Mission accomplished." He chuckled as he wondered what kind of memories the two girls would think of when they came to. Rukia, however, did not share in his enthusiasm. While she was glad their operation went off without a hitch, she had noticed that her Kido was still weak when she used some healing arts to tend to Tatsuki. While she hadn't spent very long in her Gigai, she was expecting to have recovered enough to at least be able to perform a basic healing spell. The purple-eyed girl shook her head, believing that perhaps she had overestimated her recovery as she forced a small smile so as not to rain on her partner's parade. Only time would tell when her powers would finally return to her. End chapter 4. What if Naruto x Rukia and Bleach end here, and thanks for watching my video till the end.